think since there are more people than we even expected there to be, we can probably start already, and it will take some time to know who we are. So that's already an important step. So I'll start for myself, and then I'll pass, like we have done in other meetings. I think you're familiar with it, but I'll just pass the floor to the next person, and then the next person will choose another person to pass the floor to. I'm here to facilitate this training. It's actually a series of 2 trainings. So we will do half of the job today, and it will be mostly me. So it's going to be a bit frontal today. But don't worry, if you want to have more work, then the next meeting in exactly 1 week will be much more participative, and it will be based on the work, a little homework that you will do in between the 2 trainings. So relax today. You will not be asked to do much, but you will be asked to do quite some things during this week and in the next training. And then all the way to October, you will have a lot of tasks. So for today, you can just listen and take some notes and ask some questions, and then your role will become more and more big during the whole year, in fact. As you might know, if you attended the previous online meetings, the kickoff in particular, I work often with CCIVS and with other international voluntary service organizations on these questions on assessing impact and measuring what we do, which we will go through that in the presentation, but it's quite unique and somehow strange, at least if seen from outside. For this particular project, we will focus on a technique which is also in itself not the most, let's say, standard way of assessing impact. But we thought when we wrote this project that it would be the most interesting to use and the most adapted to what we are trying to do, since we need to connect this field aspect and this impact assessment aspect with what's going on with the artists and what's going on with the advocacy and the lobbying and all the different steps of the project, which is much bigger than just the impact assessment. So I will be talking about that, and then together we will see how we proceed in the next weeks and months for the field assessment and collecting stories, which is, I anticipate, the core of the whole work. We will be mostly collecting stories, and that's what we will be talking about. So I pass the floor maybe to Ragland, since we were talking to each other. And sorry, when you introduce yourself, one thing that I would like you to share with us is if you have a preferred way of sharing a story when you share a story, meaning some of us are very comfortable writing, some of us are very poetic and talk in haiku or in traditional poems. Some of us use video, some of us use photos, some of us are very good at drawing or prefer to use drawing. So if you have a preferred way, of course, some of us sing, and I mean, I'm not sure David actually prefers that as a mean, but at least represents people who use music to express themselves. But just share with us if you have a preferred way of telling a story. Tell us which way it is, just like the tool. And then later we will go into the details. So just name, organization, more or less the project you come from or that you plan to visit, if you do the field part, and your preferred way of expressing or telling a story as a person, really, for yourself. So sorry, Raglan, go ahead.
Thank you, Francesco. I'm Raglan from FSL India. Some of you I met in Paris recently. I take care of the entire volunteering program of FSL India. I'm the overall in charge for the volunteering program, apart from other work. Since I always in that administrative role, I prefer the way of presentation in a formal way. I'm not a storyteller. I do present things in a very formal way, actually, in a very formal way. Yeah, that is what I am about, actually. Thank you.
Thank you, Raglan. Yeah, I've seen some of your presentations. They are formal, but very good. So very interesting. Can you pass the floor to someone? Anyone?
I pass the floor to David.
Hello, everyone. So nice to meet all of you, some of you again. I'm Davide Grosso from the International Music Council, Director of Programs and Partnerships. And we are, as I said, at the kickoff meeting, very happy to join this project among CCIVS members. So we are taking care of two main things. One is helping and supporting with some advocacy work. And the other part, which is the one I'm mostly in charge of, is the songwriting process, including, of course, the songwriting camp that will happen in Kenya in June. And we will not do any field work, but any field training. But as I was saying at the beginning, I joined also because I want to. Well, first of all, I'm very curious to learn, and I guess I can talk a lot. So I actually tell a lot of stories in the long form. But since I'm also a musician, I actually tell stories with sound and voices, like because I do some kind of weird electronic music. Yeah.
Okay, and we pass to I can do the
Yes, sorry. And I go to Petra.
Hello, I'm Petra. I'm from INEX, from the Czech Republic. I look after camp leaders for our work camps in the Czech Republic, and I'm also the methodologist of our trainings for camp leaders and other trainings we do. Way I tell stories, probably mostly writing, but I'm not a writer. They're just short stories, and I try to keep them funny and meaningful as short as possible. Thank you. I hand my word to Femi.
Hello, I'm Fehmi from Turkey, GSM, and I'm responsible for the advocacy. I am writing articles in a newspaper, and also taking photos. For me, it is going to be writing and photo shooting, and also I'm interested in timestamp, so short videos. May I pass the word to Raksha?
Yeah, thank you, Femi. Hello, everyone. This is Raksha from India. I'm from FSL India, but I'm also a part of the CCIVS Youth Committee, and I also come from India, so I'm based also in India right now. Like my way of telling the story is very visual, because that's how I learn as well. So I like to give it in the same format. May it be like photography or something that has to do with drawings or art or video, something that is audio visual. So yeah, and I pass this stage to Elena.
Hi, I am Elena from Lega Ambiente. Many of you I met in Paris as well, and I live in Italy. I don't know if I have a favorite way to share stories, but maybe me also, I prefer visual, like pictures and this. Thank you. I'll pass to Hannah.
Thank you. And also nice to see everyone. Long time no see for about a week. Maybe not even a week yet. I'm Hannah. I'm from Czech Republic and also from INEX. I'm in charge of the recognition section and also of impact measurements on our site. And the way how I tell stories I recently started writing articles for One Feminist webinar. And I also am in charge of advocacy activist Instagram, where I make political posts mostly focused on Palestine. And I passed word to, let me see who haven't spoken, Luciano.
Hi, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Luciano from Lega Ambiente. It's the first time in a CCIVS activity for me, of course, not for Legambiente. I work in the Youth National Committee of Legambiente with Elena, and I'm here to help her in the work with Legambiente in this project. My preferred way to share a story, playing, but not an instrument, to play a game. If you play a game, you can share and talk a lot of stories about that. And I pass to Mev.
Hello, I'm from Turkey. I represent Youth Services Center Turkey office. I'm a freelance trainer and responsible for global education piece of Youth Services Center. I'm a very curious person, so I like asking questions to people. So my way of telling stories is just telling the things that they are excited for, whatever it is in their life. So this is my way of telling stories. And I pass to Luca.
Hello, everybody. I'm Luca from Cantiere in Italy. I'm youth worker. I work with kids and young. I'm a musician, and my way to tell a story, being a musician, is music. And I pass to Sirio.
Thank you, Luca. I'm Sirio at Cantiere Giovani. As my colleague said, we run a youth center. In particular, I am the head of international area at Cantiere Giovani. That's why my presence here and within the project Voice of Change. And regarding how to deliver, how to present a story, let's say that I'm quite familiar with writing. So writing is definitely my preferred way to tell a story. And I pass the floor to Enoch.
Thank you, Ciro. I'm Enoch from South Africa Volunteer Weekend Association. Nice to meeting you, everybody, and catching up from last week in Paris. The way that I like to tell a story, like for me, maybe through photos, like drawing and videos and articles, right? You know, the kind of getting the articles online and everything like that. Yeah. I pass the story to Dorcas.
Thank you, Enoch. Hello, everyone. My name is Dorcas from South Africa, from Savoie, and I'm also part of the CCIVS executive committee. So the way I tell a story, personally, I share and talk to people. That's what I do. Thank you. And I pass it on to Yazan.
Hello, everyone. I'm Yazan, representing IPYL in Palestine. I'm responsible for coordinating work camps and more projects for IPYL in Palestine. My approach for storytelling is actually digital art, since I'm a game maker, so I find this approach can tell some stories. And I pass to Karma.
I think Karma wrote in the chat a message because I think and they're unable to talk during this meeting at least. But he said his introductions, also working for the International Palestinian Youth League, volunteering as a vocalist, and in terms of storytelling method, he's more of a visual storyteller, drawings in particular as an expression of the narrative. And he's happy to be here. And so we will not hear from Karma, but we will keep reading if they share at any time something on the chat. And I think Nikki is in a similar situation because of the noise list. So she also says that Nikki from Estonia, mostly corporate communication, visual, and sending youth from Estonia for volunteering and other type of projects. And try to tell stories through pictures and photos and art. And I'm not sure, but maybe Buse from GSM hasn't spoken so far. Yeah, okay. Same for Buse, so also not able to talk. But yeah, favorite way of working in GSM Turkey, and favorite way of sharing stories is through photos as well. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, please, but I think that's all of us having shared so far.
Yeah, I think I am the one who's left.
Yes, Chinmay, yes.
So yeah. So I'm Chinmay. So like I have recently joined the CCIVS communication team. So I'm working from India, but like I work for CCIVS. So my favorite like form of storytelling is, like I have studied filmmaking. So like I also cinematography. So I'm very used to cameras and like the process of it, the writing, going through stories and stuff. So for me, it's more of a visual form, and also like it can be narrated like the storytelling form. So I'm very excited to be a part of this project and like part of the music, the video stuff that we are planning to do. So yeah, that's my introduction, and we can probably go ahead with the meeting.
Juliana, yes. Yeah, Juliana.
Good morning, everyone.
Oh, sorry.
Linus, yeah, Linus, you just arrived, yeah. Juliana, go ahead, and then we get to the...
Okay, my name is Juliana. I am from Fundación Chiriboga in Ecuador. And my favorite way of sharing information could be informal storytelling. I'm very good at talking to people, I just realized, and to share my experiences, but I also use the formal written way while I'm working, so it could be both.
Fantastic. And last but not least, Linus from Kenya or wherever he is, he's always somewhere.
Yes, hi, hello. Sorry, I'm traveling somewhere. I'm going somewhere. And that's why I joined the meeting page. So my name is Linus Omondi here from KVSO Kenya. I think I'll be meeting most of you people here in June. Welcome. You should learn some few Swahili words. Jambo, Hakuna Matata, Bari, all that. You should learn. I think people are talking about the unique way they communicate.
Yeah, so the Linus' best way of communicating is disappearing. Yeah, I think we'll get him back when the connection comes back. But he will be the host of the 10 days songwriting workshop in Kenya. So he will be there. He will not be moving when the workshop takes place. He will be there and will be, as far as I know, he's also very much into music and songwriting as well. And that's why they insisted so much on hosting, but he does many other things as well. And you will discover, those of you who have the chance to meet him. Yeah, hosting is ugly. Ghosting host. Okay, so I think Linus is back. Let's see if we manage to see him. And Krista also just joined, or I'm not sure.
Oh, sorry. I was disrupted by a call, Kenyan call. So
no problem.
I'm just saying that my language would be creativity, music, writing, and all that. So I think that's all about me. And thank you so much for creating this platform for us to probably express ourselves and learn more about the project. Thank you so much, Francesco.
Yeah, thank you for joining even on the road.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, I saw Krista appearing and disappearing as well. So Chima, if Krista comes back, please let the person in. I think I will start sharing a bit of starting to share what we want to work on in the next weeks and months. And I will start by sharing some information that comes actually from other research that we have done, let's say more traditional, still using qualitative methods, meaning asking people about their lives and the impact of our projects in their life, but also asking people how they thought this impact took place. And one thing that we discover, because it was coming back again and again and again, in terms of how and when people share stories in international voluntary service projects and in work camps in particular, we discover that a lot happens in the kitchen, for instance, meaning that people love to share stories while they cook, especially when the cooking happens as a group or as part of a small group. We have in particular incredible stories shared by refugees and asylum seekers in projects in Europe who only felt comfortable to disclose their whole life story, actually, and in particular the difficult stories of the migration process while cooking. So that's also something that we discover about telling the stories, how much it's important to use means that people are comfortable with, and that's something we will discuss, and you will be completely free to use the tools and the means that you feel more comfortable yourself, and please to adjust to the means that the people you will meet and talk to feel the most comfortable with. So that's this evaluation technique, and I'll start going into the details of it, is a very adaptable technique. The difficulties arise more later in the analysis phase, which is not as easy as when we do statistics. We do a survey before, a survey after, we calculate the difference, and we can prove with numbers 0.072 how much something changed thanks to the project. This technique is much more flexible, but is also much more difficult in a way to fully integrate in the whole process, and that's where we will need to be very, very careful. But for today, we will mostly talk about where this technique comes from and what we are expected to do. So the technique is called the most significant change technique, but in our case, we will use it also as the most significant challenge technique, meaning that we will ask people story about change, but before we ask that, we will ask people stories about challenges that they have faced. And I will get into the detail, of course, of all of this. The idea is that when the songwriters meet in Kenya for 10 days and produce amazing songs and amazing materials that tell our story of working with music in the international voluntary service context to promote a series of ideals and a series of practices as well. And we will see in details which ones we want to promote for this Voices for Change project. They will be able to say that all that the songs and the videos and the photos, all that will be in this time capsule that will be produced by the project is, as we see sometimes on the screen of Hollywood movies or Bollywood movies or Nollywood movies, depends on where we are based. They will be able to say that they are based on a true story. So our role when we go and ask people about their stories and their relation with our projects, with the challenges that we all face, our challenge will be to bring in these stories so that when the song comes out and when we go back to the field and we use this song for lobbying, for advocacy, for promoting certain ideas at the community level, at the political level, is still based on true things that happen in the field in different parts of the world. So to go into the technique in a nutshell, it's called the most significant change technique, as I said, and it's called monitoring and evaluation without indicators. That's, of course, not entirely true. We are not going fully creative. There will be a part of the process where we will somehow go back to the idea of indicators, but overall is a form of participatory monitoring and evaluation, meaning that it's something that we don't do by ourselves to evaluate something else, but we involve people, and we involve people to tell us their stories, principally, it's born as a stories of change. In this project, we are also interested in seeing stories of challenges. So we want to also hear let's say the bad stories, because the project is supposed to answer also these challenges and encourage people and communities to use music, to use collective efforts to overcome these challenges. So we will not limit ourselves to stories of change, but also we want to hear about stories of challenge. But the technique is born as a collection of stories of change. And of course, since it is a monitoring and evaluation technique, it's change that is produced by program or project stakeholders. So it's not change in general we want to know, but we imagine that there should be a change because we have done something. We have done something at the community level. We have done something training volunteers, sending them abroad. So we know that something should have happened, but we don't limit ourselves to the categories and indicators that we set because those are our objectives, but we open the door to hear the story and discover that maybe there are other things going on thanks to these projects and other stories that will tell us more about what our projects mean for the stakeholders, whether they're community, volunteers, political counterpart, local governments. In practical terms, there are 5 steps for this technique, and we will learn about the 5 steps. Today, we will concentrate on the first 3, and in the second part of the training in 1 week, we will look at the second part, so step 4 and 5, which are, well, we need stories in order to go there. So I prefer to send you out to bring in some stories for next week rather than bring myself some stories that wouldn't really talk to you and would make the work of step 4 and 5 more difficult. So today we focus on step 1, step 2, and step 3, which means we focus on defining the domains of change. So what kind of change are we going to ask people about? When we collect the stories, and you know that the project is quite complex with many, many things happening. So we will look at the calendar and see how our work goes into the overall work of Voices for Change. And we will see in practice what does it mean to collect change stories. For the background, there is a decently long guide to this technique. So I will upload, like there is some organization have made a short version of it, but there is also the full version of it. We will upload them on the common page that has been created by Cantiere Giovani. Thank you. For this project. So I think in a few days, we should be able to have all the documents, this presentation and the official guide to the most significant change technique also uploaded there if you want to go really into the details. In principle, what we will share here and discuss here today and next Wednesday should be enough. So it has been written it started by Rick Davies, who is an Australian, and then completed together with Dr. Jess Dart. He was born in Bangladesh out of frustration, mostly, a frustration that we also share in many ways, for not having ways to communicate to the donors, because we always start, unfortunately, with the donor request or donor's need, but he was born out of frustration for having to stick to the logical framework in that case, which is one of the most used framework for monitoring and evaluation, especially in field projects and programs that are supported by governmental organizations. And Rick Davies wanted to have a way to show everything else that was going on thanks to the project, but that the logical framework couldn't capture at all. So this is how it started. I just wanted to point out that in this process, what involved many NGOs, of course, mostly from the so-called global north, but one of them, MS Denmark, is, and in particular Peter Sisgaard, who was the person responsible for MS at the time, is also, and has always been also, an IVS organization and a work camp organization. So they brought into this technique the feedback and concern from organizations that also work with volunteering and that are very much overlapping with the, especially when we talk about community impact, they're very much overlapping with the frustration that they felt in the development project area. So we have one of CCIVS, I think, co-founder. For sure, they were there in 1947 and 48 when CCIVS was being created. They were also a founder of the Alliance of European Voluntary Service Organizations. They are now known as ActionAid, but they also contributed importantly to this technique and the guidebook that goes with it. So we are rediscovering a technique that was also meant for us. So that's something important to know as part of the background. What is particular in this technique that we thought could be very beneficial to these projects? Mostly the fact that it really addresses projects like ours that are extremely complex and from which many different outcomes come out that, I remember being also myself very frustrated when I tried to present all the things that would happen thanks to our work camps at the community, volunteer level, institutional level. And the person in front of me was like, I don't think so, that's too much. And then when we went into the detail of how each of these outcomes would be produced, etc., they realized that yes, it is actually possible. But not all the time we have people who have the willingness and the interest of listening for 3 hours on how international voluntary service works. So stories can get that insight to people without the complexity of logical frameworks and other more traditional evaluation settings that can convince maybe different kind of people. But stories tend to arrive to everyone and produce this kind of instant effect and understanding. So we think that for the complexity of our project, this technique is particularly interesting. Our projects are large in the sense that, as you know, by just looking at who is here, we have everything from Ecuador to Kenya to Estonia and Italy and so on. And it's very difficult to apply the same standard indicators to projects in such diverse and large outreach. We do focus on social change. We do projects that are participatory in nature. So it's normal that our evaluation and monitoring techniques should also try to be participatory themselves. Our projects are characterized by continuous contact with the people that we work with, whether it's contact with the volunteers, contact with the local communities, contact with the institutions, but the very idea of contact is there, and that allows us to be in an ideal position in principle. And I think reading the projects that some of you are proposing for the field research that confirm this idea for me, we are in contact constantly with them, and we can. Sorry, I'll share the presentation for sure and the other documents. Sorry, I just read the message in the chat. So we will share all the presentations and all the documents as well, including the recording that we are recording now. And of course, another aspect is that our projects are, as the guide to the technique says, highly customized, which is a fancy way to say that we do adapt to our partners and stakeholders. So obviously, if we adapt a lot our tools of our international voluntary service to the different stakeholders, then we can also expect that the outcomes will be very customized and very highly customized, meaning they will correspond to what the project needed at the local level. So they will be very diverse and difficult to put together, if not in a storytelling way. Is there any questions so far? Because then we are going into the most important part, let's say, of the technique for today's presentation, at least. So if you have any question for the introduction so far, this would be the good moment to ask.
The question is answered by you already, whether the presentation will be shared. So you already answered.
Yes, we'll share these. We will share the recording, and we will have another training in 1 week where we can also rediscuss all these if after 1 week you realize that I didn't really get what we were talking about, because it's totally possible. Then I continue with, we go into step 1 of the technique itself. Okay, so the background, it's more or less clear, and you can reread the information about it. I will go into the steps, which is it means from now on is the things that you need to do as well. As I said earlier, the step one is defining the domains of change. So the good news for us, of course, bad news because we don't get to as involved as one might be. But the good news for us is that the global reflection meeting that some of you attended actually and ended just 4 days ago in Versailles, in France, so part of the Voices for Change, really worked on what are the domains that we want to prioritize for this work. So what areas are we talking about? What are the areas where we want to see change? What are the areas where we want to explore challenges? And these are, so typically in the most significant change technique, we try to limit to 3 to 5 domains maximum, because the idea of establishing domains which are very large, as you see in the description, they are very broad areas, is that people can talk and share stories that are even loosely attached to that domain. So we shouldn't have too many domains, otherwise it becomes completely, let's say, overly creative, let's say, in a positive way. So we have these 5 domains that are strongly suggested by the Global Reflection Meeting of Voices for Changes, and I will go into the details a little bit for all of them, and I will tell you also on which ones we will focus the most for the research part, for the storytelling part. So one is, of course, the International Voluntary Service for Climate Justice and Ecological Restoration. That's one of the priorities. They're actually called advocacy proposals for International Voluntary Service. That's the name of the official document. So the first proposal is about IVS for climate justice. The second one is about mobility. The third one is about the overall decolonizing process, and in particular for the partnership and funding between different parts of the world. The fourth advocacy proposal concerns participation, so right-based and inclusive participation, to make sure that everyone can access voluntary service and international voluntary service. And the fifth one is about the recognition of IVS itself, whether it's in the national policy, in global policies, and I would add, especially for our task of talking with the community, recognition by the community as well of the role of international voluntary service. So these will be, as I said, broad areas, but quite clearly identified by the Global Reflection Meeting of the project that ended last week. Our area of research, we will look for things in those areas. They are large enough that we can slip in some interesting things that might not immediately come as evidently linked to these 5, but they are also narrow enough that we will have a clear focus. So these are what our stories should talk about. To go a little bit more in detail, that means when we talk about climate justice, it means that we will look for stories about community-driven ecosystem restoration, good cooperation with the community for projects that are about biodiversity, and in general about developing climate-robust communities, as it's written in the policy proposal. So when we talk about climate justice and we go looking for stories, we will look for the challenges that our communities and our volunteers and our own organizations, because we are part of the project of the research as well, have in terms of climate justice, and these will be the main themes that you will ask people to share stories with you about. When we talk about mobility, we are talking about freedom of movement and equitable access to volunteering, opportunities for all, and regardless of the origin. So here, you might, for instance, talk with the volunteers who manage or did not manage to move across, across countries, across borders, across their own home, because we have people who will do the research in Hebron, and sometimes they find their own door, locked and the wall instead. So different levels of movement and absence of freedom of movement that our stakeholders and our own volunteers will want to share with us in terms of their stories. I mentioned Hebron because it's the place where I heard the most, as some of you said, also like funny stories, although they were not so funny, but they were very funny as well at the same time, because that's a paradox. But this is one topic that is very important for us, and hearing and recording stories about this element of IVS going to be very, very important. When we talk about decolonizing, we talk about the general area of this balance of power and resources between organizations, between countries, between regions of the world, and the idea that we want to go towards an inclusive partnership model, but we will listen and ask organizations to share with us their realities, also their challenges in trying to shift from the classic models of cooperation to new model of cooperation. Can be things extremely simple, as like the participation fees of the volunteers, who pays what to whom, to extremely complex ways of building projects with local communities in the north and the south and the east and the west as well. But we want to know more about how this decolonizing process is going on. As I said, the fourth domains of change is participation in general, and in particular, the rise, the safety, and the well-being of all volunteers. So again, this is, we can of course ask these stories from the community, we can ask these stories from the volunteers themselves and from our own staff in the organizations that are familiar with this element, but we want to learn more and share more stories about volunteers' rights and participation, and especially in conflict-affected and post-crisis and marginalized context. Again, when it's in quotation mark, is because it comes from the advocacy proposals that are already part of this program. And our role will be to bring in stories that explain better what it means when we talk about these 5 domains and these 5 advocacy proposals. What's behind that? What's the story of the people behind these advocacy proposals? Okay, it's like we clarify with the story example in all the different medias that you mentioned as possible ways of telling a story. We help clarifying these advocacy points. The last one being the recognition of IVS itself. So how IVS is actually a legitimate pathway for civic engagement, peace building, learning, and sustainable development. So this is maybe the most large of the 5 areas, because we can see here stories of people, being hired. I just thought about that because of Linus' presence, but Kenyan volunteers being hired in a national park in Uganda after volunteering in that park. And that's one way of recognizing the IVS pathway towards something, all the way to story from the community, from the government recognition, from the certification program that we are trying to work on with CCIVS. So this is the 5th area. So we have these 5 domains. For the moment, you will see we will limit ourselves, at least for this week, to only one of them, so that we try and test ourselves to see if we can go ahead or not. But these are the 5 domains that are very important for the program. And we should be able in the next months to bring stories that help us understanding better what these 5 domains mean for the people that are part of our projects, for the communities, for our own staff, for our political counterparts when we have some, and for the volunteers themselves, of course. Questions about the 5 areas? Was any of you I think some of you mentioned that you were in Versailles. If you want to say something about these 5 asks or 5 proposals that come from the meeting in Versailles, you're more than welcome, because I wasn't there.
Can I share something?
Yes,
I'm
please.
I'm glad that the presentation includes the revised version of the discussion, because we did, like the people who were in the Versailles meeting, we did really work hard on the part where we were like, hey, I think this is not going to work. I think we need to modify according to the trend, like all the challenges that we are facing at the current moment. So I'm glad that it's already included in the presentation. Thank you for that. And yeah, I'm looking forward to work on this.
Yeah, thank you very much, Raksha. I'm happy that you could recognize that. In fact, this is very much what is expected from us, to react quickly, feed the process, and help then the wheel keep keep going. But yeah, this was shared immediately by the team that was in Versailles, and we try to integrate, because we need to bring stories about this, and then the songwriters will need to use the stories with in mind the advocacy proposals that are behind the stories to then create the process, and then you will see we will go again. So I will then maybe explain how in practice it will go, this process, because the step 2 of the technique is to decide how and when to collect stories. This, again, I mean, ideally is discussed with all stakeholders. In practice, we have a project to stick to, and so we kind of already know, in most cases, the when, and we will discuss a little bit more the how. But in general, the step 2 of the most significant change technique is deciding what methods to use, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but also when to go and collect stories, because the technique, as I said at the beginning, is very flexible and in general it requires whenever possible. And for this project, we made sure that it is possible, including financially, to support your work on the field. The collection of stories, the analysis of stories is supposed to be a continuous process to go on for a few months, so that we can really update in real time if there is any change produced, in particular for this project, by the summer activities, the local actions that many of the organizations we run in July and August. So we want to go there on the field before these actions take place, and we want to go on the field after this action take place. So I'll guide you through this visual labyrinth of arrows. There will be a first story collection. It's a test, it's our test, and I'll tell you more at the end of the meeting about what I will ask those of you who are willing to do and those of you who will have to do it in the field. I will just ask you to collect one story. It can be from grandma, it can be from your colleagues at work, it can be from children from the school, it can be from someone in the bus. I'll give you the topic later, but we just need one story in any of the formats that you talked about. So you can send me totally the sound of the chirping birds in World Heritage Site in Togo, as long as you will also explain what it is and why it's important, and I will be very happy. I give this specific example because Davide was saying not just music, but sounds, because of electronic music. But for me, one of the most interesting visits on the field that I've done was in a World Heritage Site in Togo. And what made it interesting is that the local community representatives were able to bring us into understanding why certain parts of this very large cultural and natural site were important because of the sounds that one could hear in those parts. So you're very welcome to, if someone can tell you a story, or if you can find the story by yourself because you know a place where there is constantly this sound. You know, it's in Rome, we have the 12 o'clock shooting of the cannon that says it's 12 o'clock. That tells a story as well. That tells a story of centuries. Other places you have other kind of shooting. That's definitely telling a story. So don't hesitate to also use sounds or any of the other media. But I will ask you to bring a short story before April 21st, which is Monday, so that they can have a look at that. And then we can use them in the next training, because in the next training, we will do the difficult part of the technique, which is sharing the stories and selecting the stories and understanding why they're important. So in chronological order, from now to April 21st, which is next Monday, please, you will be invited to collect one story. Then in the second training, we will use these stories to learn what we do with the stories once we have them, how we select and analyze. Then we will have the story collection that will probably focus more, depending on where you go, but probably focus more on collecting stories of challenges. Okay, this we will quantitatively challenge you a bit more. So we will ask at least 5 stories for each organization that goes into the field. These stories are particularly important because we will feed the Earth Activist Training and Songwriting Workshop in Kenya. So we need to collect these stories, realistically speaking, by the beginning of June, so that then we can do the selection and provide the workshop with not too many stories that they will be bored and not read them, but with the most significant stories that they can use in the songwriting process, so that they can get inspired by this. They can utilize, real sounds, real stories, real lyrics coming from the field that they will be talking about in the story, so that it's not just a creative process by the people that are there, but they will be inspired by the stories and creative process of all the people that you will have met before the workshop in Kenya. So this is very important because it will give the creative process a much larger perspective, because they will be inspired by also places that they do not know personally, but that they will learn about thanks to our stories. So this is something very, very crucial for the whole process. So these stories will go into the songwriting workshop. Then we will receive, all of your organization will receive something from the songwriting workshop that will bring us to a second story collection. Once the songs and the other messages coming from the workshop will become part of the local actions. As you know, there are local actions in July and August, mostly implemented by some of the organizations, in which we use the songs and the messages to do advocacy, to do awareness raising. During and after that period, we go and collect stories that will focus more on change. So we will go and look if and how the song produced, the messages delivered, created with the advocacy proposals, etc. If and how they immediately have an impact on the people that receive these messages. So we will do kind of a real-time assessment of whether people are actually moved emotionally, but also physically to action by the production that comes from the songwriting workshop and by the local action. So we have these two major moments where we collect stories. One from April 22, which is the day after, should be April 24, sorry. But anyway, from the day after the next training, so from next Thursday to June 1st is the first collection of stories, which will focus more on the challenges faced by our communities, by our volunteers, by our own organizations. And then a second collection of stories, which is after the local actions, where we'll focus more on the change produced by these actions and by the messages coming from the songwriting workshop. At the very end, so once we collect both type of stories and all the local actions have taken place, then we finalize again this process. As I say, is that this selection and analysis process of the stories goes on and on over the whole process, because we have new stories, then we change the stories, we change our preferred stories to illustrate different messages. But everything goes into two important places at the end of the process. One, into the policy development and advocacy document. So we will illustrate this document, which is a policy document, with the stories that come from the field. And it goes into the symposium on environmental and social justice, where we will present all the stories, and some of them, I guess, will go into the time capsule that is one of the products, let's say, of the project. So this is, I hope, making it much more real for all of you in terms of what's going on in the next weeks and months. Many of you have identified the places where you will go, and then in the next training we can go into the details of whether or not this can work for you. But this is how it's supposed to work. Do you have? I keep the slide here. Do you have questions about this particular part of the process, meaning when we go to collect stories and why? Seems like yes. Okay. Wonderful. I have Chinmay, and I think Juliana was starting to say something.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Go ahead, and then we have Ragland and Enoch and Sirio and Chinmay. Okay. So there are many questions about this. So let's go with this.
Okay.
Juliana, go ahead.
Just a technical question. I don't know if I missed the information, but who are we sending the test story until 21st of April to?
It will be in the next slide. Those stories to me.
Okay.
In general, you send everything to me. It's my.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, in general, but yeah. Okay, wonderful. I think Jemai was the next in terms of how fast you raise your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah. So my question is like when we say when you say that like share stories, are these stories are more of a fantasy kind of stories or more of a real stories? And also the other question is like, do you want more of a completed stories or some stories which are still alive, you know, like still going on? When we talk about climate, some things are happening. So like, do you want more about that or more of a completed success stories of this thing? So that was one of my questions. And another like kind of small idea I was having is that the other stories that we are going to have, we are going to have a lot of stories, but we are going to select few, right? But some stories which are there, we can use it for our communication plan, and like we can make posts about it, we can make content around it, so that like we can promote the project even more. So that was also one idea which I wanted to share, and that's all.
Yeah, that's definitely part of the plan, is to use some of the stories, the ones that we will find particularly meaningful and reflecting well the advocacy proposals and the overall scope of the project for communication as well. Yeah, this is something that well, you are part of the CCIVS team, so you will discuss with the other people in the team and with the coordinators of the project. But definitely, that's a good idea. For the true story or fantasy, the simple answer will be true story. Although I'm an anthropologist and I know how important fantasy stories, how much they can tell us about reality. But in principle, we're talking about true story. I have a slide later that gives you the basic things that we want to be in the story. Okay, so I'll get to that in a couple of slides, I think.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Raglan was next, I think.
Yeah. The test story is connected to the 5 areas we are talking about, or any common story?
It will be connected to one of the areas. We'll introduce the area. I mean, I can tell you already, I would like you to focus on the climate justice pillar, let's say, of the project.
Okay, done.
But I'll show you later. I'll go back to that as well. Thank you. Okay, then Enoch.
Thanks, Francesco. Actually, Ragnar asked the question, but follow up on that as kind of how do we link these stories together? You know, like maybe a story from India kind of links to South Africa, India or Kenya to maybe Europe somewhere. I don't know how we're gonna link those stories.
Yes, that's going to be part of what we will discuss in the second training. But for the technique, and then we can decide also to do something different if we want at some moment. But for the technique, the way we link them is by bringing them all together and doing what is called a selection process based on how meaningful they are for the overarching goals and objectives of the project. So in principle, we will not merge them into a new story. We will stick to the single stories, just make narrow it down to maybe 10, 15, depending on how many we have and how many of them are corresponding to what we are looking for. But in the technique, the process is a selection process where different people involved tell us which story they find more meaningful. And then through that, we arrive to a set of stories that can come from every corner. But we will be the one doing it. So we can also decide that we want to, fusion some of them because they talk about the same things and they tell us something important. But that will be a new step, let's say. I think Sirio had raised the hand, but then put it down if I'm... or
yeah,
not.
it's always good to be the last one making question because you already answered to the question. Yeah, the question I had mostly overlapped with what Chimney asked. So I will wait for the next slides, and if I still have doubts, I will raise my hands again. Thanks.
Wonderful. And Femi, because talking also raises new questions. Femi, go ahead.
So I have a question about the big picture, because since the beginning I have difficulty to understand the big picture. The name of the thing that we are going to have in Kenya is Climate Justice Relay is Earth Activist Training and Songwriting. When I'm reading this, I am directly thinking to climate justice and climate issues. But at the same time, we are talking about 5 policy proposals that we have prepared at Versailles. So there are 5 topics, but Kenya looks like as one topic. And I have difficulty to, like Raksha is doing this, to connect all of those issues, because at the end of the day, as in your slide, it says policy development and advocacy document. So what is the thing that is expected from us? Could you please clarify this? Because we have 5 big topics, and they may be also related to the stories and so on and so on. So I feel a little bit lost.
Yes, it's very understandable. My understanding so far, and I hope I'm right, but I am arrogant enough to think that I did get this one right. Climate justice is our main thematic area, meaning it's where we do something through voluntary service, through the songwriting, through the songs. It's our main core goal is to be making change in terms of climate justice. The other areas are the ways we want to make changes. So we want to bring that change clearly into this advocacy level that are about recognition, that are about mobility. So let's say that we want people to see that we are able to plant 10,000 mangroves in Indonesia. That's our and what's the effect of that on the ecosystem in Indonesia, on the global ecosystem, and why it's important to plant mangroves, and why we are the best at doing it somehow, for some reason. That's our, let's say, main topic. But then we want to be able to use that knowledge and those stories with the other declination, meaning we want to see if there has been, let's say, a Palestinian volunteer in Indonesia planting mangroves, and why that volunteer went to Palestine. What does it say about the importance of free mobility around the world thanks to IVS? What does it create to have someone from Palestine planting mangroves for peace when there are several other ideas that come to mind immediately if you think Palestinian doing peace work? You don't think planting mangroves in Indonesia, and yet that's part of the IVS process and the mobility. Or you can have the project with mangroves in Indonesia recognized by the government of the city where that's happened with the award of the best ecosystem contribution from youth. And then you have the recognition pillar of the advocacy. So I would say that climate justice is really the theme of the, you can see our logo. It doesn't look very recognition, a little bit mobility because of the wings, but it looks very much climate justice. But the other 4 pillars will be our way of showing that how IVS works, why it's important to work in that way, and why we want to lobby for IVS recognition, mobility, easier mobility, inclusion of different kind of participants from the community, volunteers. So in a way, you are free to focus on climate justice because that's what comes first, in my understanding as well. But then we leave it also to the people who are part of the other steps to transform what we will bring, which will be stories mostly about climate justice and a little bit about the rest, to transform that into the policy development and advocacy documents, or decide how to use these stories, what can they be leveraged for, and that's somehow not fully our job. We have to keep that in mind, that at some moment these stories will serve another purpose, but for us the role is really to bring in interesting stories, and stories that we feel are telling something about the change that we are trying to produce, and the change in particular that music also can bring in, because after the songwriting workshop we will look a lot about that, about the connection that the artist can create with the nature, with the environment, with the communities. So I would say let's focus on climate justice as if it was the main thing, and let's then reevaluate the other 4 as more the support measures, as they call it in the European Commission. So ways of doing that and doing it better than usual. but it's a very legitimate question that I think we all ask ourselves at some moment during the process of the program.
Can I ask something?
Yeah, sure, Elena. Go ahead. Yes.
Before you said the challenge story collection will be from June, right?
No, up to June. Up to June.
Up to June. Okay. Okay. No. Okay. Thank you.
Good. Should I move on then maybe to the next 3 slides? Only 3 left, and around 20 minutes, so we should be good, kind of on time for once. I'm covering the slide on my screen with your faces. Okay, now we are good. So how do we collect the stories? I think, and remember who was that says, I just ask questions. That's exactly what we are going to do. We are just going to ask questions, but a little bit of specific question. The idea of the most significant change technique is that we go and ask our stakeholders. Again, we are talking about community, and we are talking about volunteers. We are talking about our own program staff who were involved in building and implementing the projects that we are talking about. We are going to ask them about the most significant challenges and the most significant changes that they have experienced or observed. Again, think about one of your staff. Maybe they have seen things they didn't necessarily live it themselves, but they observe things and they can share that as well, and it will help us building at a bigger picture. So under the different domains. And we will also ask them, and I'll go more in details in the next slide, why the person who tells you the story believes that that story is meaningful, so that we have a better understanding of what the story means for the person that shared the story. Because of course, again, we can interpret why the story is important, and you can go from from Freud to contemporary anthropology, a range of interpretation of what the characters in the story mean and represent. But the reality is that we want to know why the person who tells you the story tells you that story. So we will ask them not just to tell us a story about the challenges and changes that they've experienced, but also we will ask them very simply, why do you think this is an important story? What makes you share this story in particular? Okay? And this sounds basic, but it will open really the door to an important discussion. And here, what I want also to really underline, because it's something that comes again and again and again in every program where we add an impact assessment or impact measurement dimension, this is a wonderful moment with your partners, with your volunteers, with the stakeholders from the community. So remember not to waste it thinking I need to bring back a story, and use it to really listen and talk with the person. Because worst case, we don't have a story from that place and we will have some other stories, but for sure, this will help you a lot understanding what's going on. And first of all, we do this impact work for us to understand better what's going on, and not to evaluate them, or many of them feel like it's an exam when we start talking about how things are going on the field, and is everything okay, and can you tell me more? That's not why we do this. We do first and most to understand better what's going on. So it's very important. That's why it's very important to ask them why they share the story and what they believe. Do take that time. If we end up without a particularly brilliant story, but you have actually understood better your partner or your community or your volunteer, that's even better, I would say, than having wonderful stories. Because wonderful stories, at the end, if we really need one, we can even write them. It's not the idea of this process, but it's very important that you use the time for yourself, for your organization, and for your partners first. Then the rest will come. What we do is that these stories, at some moment, we need to write them down, or if they are recorded, if they are video, or if they are sound, we need to be able to communicate and transfer these stories. So to me, to maybe some of you will join me in the analysis process. So depending on which kind of media and tools you will use, at some moment you will have to stop and put the story in a format that can be communicated to me, and then later to the other people who are involved in the different steps. So think of that in advance. You can definitely ask the persons that you talk to do this part, meaning you can use photography and ask people, if some of you have 2 or 3 cameras and work a lot with children in the school, you can give the cameras to the children and ask them, can you take a picture that for you illustrates what's going on in this school since you work with us? And then they take the pictures, and then we receive the pictures with, I will show you how, but some elements that help us understand the picture. You can ask the people to write a short poem about the challenges they have at the community level when it comes to climate change. You can ask them to write a letter to the future generations about this forest. Okay, so the medium, I leave you really free because you have your own preference as the person who goes and collect, and you know better than us the people you will interact with. Hopefully it's people that you have access to, that you have already a connection with, so you will know if they prefer to tell you an oral story or write you an email or make you a drawing. Personally, I remember we used it for one project in Palestine like 15 years ago. We used a drawing, and the drawings plus the explanation about the drawing was extremely interesting, for instance. So you choose the medium that you want and find more appropriate. But what we want is the story and the brief explanation of what the story means. And we want it reportable, meaning communicable, so in a format that then we can have access to. Okay, so this is in a nutshell what it means. Yes, Hannah, before we move to next.
I was just wondering, in case of either written stories or like voice recorded, should it be in English? Because some of or many of our partners are actually not able to communicate in English.
This, I might ask the point of view of Davide, since he will be there as well. His main task will be in Kenya, but I just saw Ed Sheeran saying, "Why don't we put a Persian word here and then making billions with a new song that has a one Persian word?" If you have your interviews in Czech and you tell us, "Oh, this story is so powerful," and you tell us what it means, we can give this to the songwriters, and maybe they can use the voice of the person. I'm imagining this very old Czech lady in the countryside, but maybe is a young student in Prague. But if you think that story is meaningful and the way it's told is meaningful, maybe is the tone of the voice, maybe is the sounds that reflect what the story is about. As long as you give us the small explanation of what it is, I'm sure. But I asked Davide that the songwriters can be inspired by that, and we can put it in the capsule as well later. So I don't know, Davide, do you have an idea about that? Do you think
Well, I think that the most challenging thing will be to bring all this into one song. But we haven't, well, first of all, we haven't had yet the opportunity to sit and talk through the program. But one thing that I'm sure we all agree with my colleagues, with Linus and Vicky, that we have discussed this, is that we have no pre-concept, which means that if we feel that the song would be in old Czech, then we will do that probably. Or if we want to mix Indian and Czech, probably there will be no problem at all, as long as it's, of course, I'm exaggerating, but I'm saying that it will be complete freedom to test our ideas and to see what it works, and maybe I'm actually thinking right now that there could be one song and others, and maybe the one would be like the anthem or the real output, and others not to throw away things. But it's really something, because we will be quite big number of people, a lot of ideas. So it's that's probably the most challenging things on how to channel this into one thing, but it will be completely freedom and creativity, that's for sure.
Yeah, from my side, I would say let's go with the local language and some explanation, if that's the best way of respecting the story. How I see the process, and how we discussed it when we wrote the project, is really This is food for the artists. And what we want is to recognize in the song or the songs that come out the stories that they ate. It's the same as when we, I don't know, in school, when we study a poet from 19th century, then you recognize that, oh, he read the classics from the 15th century. You can see it because he used this word, he used this reference, and that's what we want to know, to say it's all based on true stories, meaning we recognize ourselves in the song, in the songs, in the movement, in the sounds. We recognize the stories behind. That's our challenge, to be able to still follow when it becomes something else. Ragland.
Yeah, I understand that the songs will be at multiple languages of all the regions or the partners' languages, and there will be English transcription. This is what I understand as far as the final outcome is concerned, actually.
I think that's the plan, yes, that the main song will be in different languages as well. I think, yeah, Davide, Linus, Vicky will, and Celia, and they will all need to discuss more before the process. But yeah, as a sorry, I was checking and I forgot what I was checking. But anyways, yeah, the idea is also that Raksha was writing in the chat. The idea is that the people who share this story will be able to recognize themselves and to recognize that their voices are part of the global voice that we are building for advocacy as well and for lobbying. But we are bringing the voices of everyone into the song. So that's so it's also our challenge to make sure that we remember, oh, that comes from that story. But to do that, we will have this basic reporting elements that we will ask you to include when you send the stories. But that's the overall idea.
Yeah, and if I may, Francesco, I don't know if I remember 100% correctly, but there is a part of the project which foresee that for the capsules, translation will be also in whatever languages, because we did a project in targeting, I think, 13 or 15 African countries a few years ago, and we did a songwriting contest. And from that, the winner of the songwriting, then we kind of extract a jingle, and this jingle was then translated. Song was in English, but the jingle was translated in Swahili or whatever, like in I don't know how many languages. So that could also be some food for thought.
Yeah, I think this is something to be checked again with Vicky, who has the overall view on the project, but I think it's planned, and the capsule might be slightly different depending on the countries as well. I don't know if there will be only one capsule. That's I'm not 100% sure. So we go into the very last step, so the step of actually collecting. As I said, so first of all, to whom do we ask these stories? The idea in general is to go to the people that we are most connected with, that are more familiar with us, that can feel ready to share the most, and that they were connected with the project, with our project. So the idea is not to stop people in the street and ask a story about climate justice randomly, but more to go to people that we know should have a story of some kind because they were involved in our projects, or they have been facing the challenges for which we build up our projects. So the stakeholders, as we say, most directly involved in our programs. That can be the so-called beneficiaries, although we benefit a lot from our own projects, or even our volunteers, of course, and also our own project or program staff. And there's basically two moments only in this process. One is the key question, the large question, which is looking back over the last month, or it can be over, depends what your project does and when your project was, but looking back, what do you think was the most significant challenge for the first collection of data, change for the second collection of data in particular, in the domain that you choose for the story and for changing? So probably you will ask one person only about one domain, and again, the climate climate justice area, the ecosystem restoration, biodiversity will be the main area for most of the stories. We listen to the story. So what means the story? We should have who did what, when, and why. And we should be able to understand these elements, whether the story contains it or you complete it with your notes to explain what the story is about. But at the end of the story, we want to know more or less who did what, when, and why. Okay, so that's the basic elements of the story that we want. And then once you have a story, we do want to discuss and to understand and to take notes about why the person thinks that this story illustrates well the challenges that they're facing, first collection, illustrates well the change that happened, second collection. And I want to also say the change that didn't happen, because we are not only looking for perfect stories, we are also looking to understand if nothing changed when we wanted to change something. So also for, let's say, negative impact or no impact when we wanted to do something. Like if you use the new song "Go" in the mall in Estonia, again, something we have done in the past in Narva, some pop-up awareness raising through music in a mall in Narva. In Narva. Nobody listened, nobody cares, nobody even remembers the tone of the song, then maybe there was no change. We wanted a change. We bring back the story as a story that tells us that things don't always go the way we want. It's still a very important story for our network. But these are the two main elements. What do you think was the most significant challenge or change? Illustrating a story. You listen to the story, you try to record the story in whichever way, depending on the media that you chose, and then discuss why this story is important. These are really the two basic elements. It's much more difficult than it looks, maybe, or maybe it looks already difficult. What we will be looking at when you share these stories with us, and us is pluralis majestatis, it's just me for the moment, but some of you might join me. When you share the stories, we want to know who provided the story. So who is this person? Is it the stakeholder? Is it someone from the community? Is the mayor of the city? Is your project manager? It's who is the person who provided the story. And it's also to give credit back when we will maybe use the story, and for the person to be recognized also in that sense. When and where the challenge or the change happens. So we want to contextualize things. We want to know if it's something that, the big change that happened in the community when they planted the first mangrove or when they planted the 1 millionth mangrove. It's a different story, At the beginning, nobody was doing anything, and it took 1 million mangroves to have the community triggered and switch on and do something with itself. So we want to know where and where the change happened and the challenge happened. Then, as it's the question you will ask, what the storyteller believes is the significance of the events, so why they think this is an important story. And then in general, it would be good to have, like you already shared some of you in the online form, what kind of projects were implemented there, so that we can see the links between the projects done and the change or the challenges faced or the change that happened. Okay, so this will be the elements that we want you to include in the form. For the moment, I do not prepare a specific form until next week, because you will see how comfortable you feel in sharing these things, and then we will see together if we have a common form that will come as an attachment to whatever format your story will be in, or if you prefer to provide the information in different ways. But we do want that information. And the best way of doing it is of learning about the technique is by doing it, as for many things. So this is the last thing for today from my side, at least. Of course, I'll answer more questions if there are. It's a little homework. As you can see, I did choose climate justice and ecological restoration. So any story linked to ecosystem restoration, biodiversity protection, development of climate robust communities. The idea is that each of you, at least those who are supposed to do it in big, from April on until June, and then after the local election. So those of you who are, let's say, our field researchers, I would like you to share with me. So you have the email address there. So by email, if you see that it's easier to send it by WhatsApp, you send me an email, and then if it's a video, maybe it's easier to send it by WhatsApp or something. But the idea is that we collect at least a few of these stories, up to 1 page if you write it down. Can be photos, can be videos, can be drawings, can be poetry, whatever the format. We want at least one story from each of you, so that with the additional information that I presented in the previous slide, because in the next episode of these online training sessions, we will look at what happens with the stories. Once we have the stories, what do we do with them? How do we read them? How we communicate about them? And how we select them so that they can, go to the next stage of the project and be meaningful for what David and the songwriter will do in Kenya, and then next step be meaningful for those who will write the final advocacy document, and be useful for those who will hold the symposium in South Africa. So that's what our role will be. And in the next training in 1 week, we will share the stories, which will be suddenly making sense of all these technical talking about the technique. We will actually look at the stories, and we will look what we do with them. And so you will be much more involved, because I will ask you to share the stories, to share the background of the stories, and then we will probably split in groups to try out the selection process. Because the technique, if you feel ready for that and you feel like the conditions are there, you can have one more step at your level, meaning that you can have 15 stories and then involve the stakeholders in selecting 2 or 3 out of these 15, and then it will be even more representative. And you can do the same process that we will do among ourselves next Wednesday for the story selection. You can do it at the local level as well, and then add one level of complexity, but one level of beautiful complexity, I would like to say. So if you bring and send these stories before next training, then during the training we will be able to do the steps 4 and 5 of the most significant change technique, and look at real stories and what we do with them. So for today, I think this is quite enough. But if you have final questions before going and do the homework, as I said, this, I mean, it doesn't need, you can ask your grandma about the challenges in climate change if you think she has a good story, and if she's alive. So it's purely for testing purposes. You don't need to think too much about the person who gives you the story. We will use it as a training element. But then, of course, once you go in the field, that will be much more important to know, to make sure that the person who shares the stories are the person who are supposed to be engaged by our projects and our counterparts in the field. Okay, but for next Wednesday, just send a story, because then we will have enough material to work on Wednesday, same time as today. And then I'm coming back, but we will leave. Any final questions or needs before going into, yeah, Juliana, thank you.
So in my case, I have a question, because in my case, like from April until April 21 is kind of a short time for me, because I live very far away from the community I want to do advocacy for. But of course, I know their reality, because I've been working with them for a long time. So I will be doing a story, like telling things, maybe including pictures that I already have about them. But it's kind of difficult to find the person who said the story, because at the beginning they just explained the need, and actually as organization we were the ones guiding them towards a solution or a change, and of course evaluating their challenges first. So I know they feel those challenges, but they speak another language as well, so it's kind of difficult to see who provided the story. So just I was wondering, it could be me providing the story, or I have to mention the community as the providers. of the story?
Or I would say for the purpose of next week, meaning the purpose of having stories for the training ourselves on what to do with the stories, it would be completely okay that is your story. Meaning, it's Juliana, I have done this program as, the responsible for implementing these activities, talking with the communities, etc. And then it's your story, it's the story that you observe. So we know that it's you talking of what you have seen in the communities, the needs that you have perceived from the community, and it's perfectly fine for the training of next week. It will be very useful and very interesting. In the future, we expect you to go and see them or call them or whatever story you bring will be their story fully. But you're part of our community, and your story will be a meaningful story for the exercise that we need to do. So it's completely fine that it's you talking in first person of what you observed and maybe using a photo for that and explaining why. That's perfectly okay.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. And Ragland?
Yeah, my question is, since IVS is promoting intercultural exchange, and out of the 5 advocacy areas, where do you think it will most significantly fit in actually? Out of the 5 advocacy areas, where the intercultural exchange stories fit into this actually?
Yeah, that's
based on your experience, Francesco. I know it comes into all the 5. It can spread into all the 5, but I would ask you as a specialist where it can fit perfectly.
Yeah, for where I would put it is either in the participation pillar, let's say, inclusive participation, because it means to be able to recognize the differences in culture, to adjust to each other's differences, to allow participation in different ways. So that's maybe the first place where I would think of including intercultural learning. And maybe the other part is more intercultural learning at the organizational level, I would say, but it's something we leave a lot in IVS, is the decolonizing process, because I think there is that level of intercultural learning, which is across organizations. We are also very intercultural, ways of adapting to each other's way of working. And that's, for me, a very important aspect of IVS, because it's something that I'm always reminded when I meet people who are not in the IVS movement and tell me how amazing it was with their project with 2 countries, Finland and Sweden together. And we have now here, 14 countries, and we are trying to work together as we do every day across 5 continents. So we do something very peculiar, and we are a little bit used about it. But I think under that pillar of global partnerships, and there is also a lot of intercultural learning that you can go and look for in the stories, because I think it would be extremely interesting to know stories about how we adapt to each other and change the way we work because of the willingness of working with someone else. So these are the 2 places I would say where I would look more for intercultural learning stories.
Thank you, Francesco. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good. Well, I think we have, thank you very much for staying, not just staying, but being very participative and alert and asking a lot of very important questions. If it's good for you, I would say we give each other appointment for next week, same day, Wednesday, same time, which is 2 p.m. Paris time, Central European Standard Time now, I think. In the meantime, if you have any questions, you might send me an email. And if not, we will discuss many things the next week when we look at the stories themselves and the selection of the stories. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the.
Thank you, Francesco.
And see you.
Thank you.
See you next week.
Thank you so much, Francesco.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yes, my email, sorry, is in the presentation, but we are not
Thank
sharing
you so
the
much.
presentation yet.
Thank you. Thank you, Francesco. Thank you.
I put I'll share the presentation as well, but thank you. Bye. Thank you very much. So as I said, we will continue where we left last Wednesday, but we will be listening to other people than myself today, and we will test in the small version. That we will test the technique ourselves. So to go back to what we did in the previous episode, we introduced the technique, the most significant change technique, as a participatory and monitoring and evaluation technique, one that is based on collecting stories of change. And we also said that for the specific needs of Voices for Change, although the voices are indeed for change, but we also want to collect some challenges, especially in the first part of the project, which is from now to the songwriters training in June. So for us, is the most significant change, but also the most significant challenge technique. Last Wednesday, we looked at the first 3 steps. I mean, there is 5 to 9 or more steps, depending how deep we go into the technique, but we are fine with 5 steps. So last time we talked about the domains of change, and we saw how the Voices for Change first meeting in Versailles gave us some domains of change, and also we saw how we will most likely stay around everything that is climate justice and environmental related issues. But of course, we will step into the other issues, which were of mobility, of participation, of recognition of IVS, which are very important for the project, and especially for the advocacy part of the project, which comes in the second part of the year. We also looked, and we will look again today because it's a very important part, at how and especially when to collect the stories. And we started looking into the details of collecting the change stories, how that is done. Today we will continue and add some useful, I hope, information on how to collect stories in slightly different ways than the mainstream use of this technique. And we will see the very important step of how we select the most significant stories. We will test this way of working and see if it works for us or not, and if we need to adjust something. And then we will also briefly talk about the verification step of the technique, which comes at the end. Not everyone needs to be involved, but it's important to know what it means and why we need that final step. So we ended last time asking you to do some homework, which consisted on the basic elements of collecting the story. So we asked you to ask this basic question of looking back over the last month or year or weeks, depending on who you interacted with, and bring us a story. And we said that it should be related, or it would better be if it was related to IVS for climate justice and ecological restoration. And together with the story, which many of you kindly sent, you also had a report form where we had these important elements that we need in order to use this technique, meaning we need to know who provided the story, when and where the challenge or the change that we are talking about in the story happened, what is the opinion of the storyteller about why that story is significant, and also, since we are organizations that try to implement activities that bring change, what kind of projects do you have, if you have any project in that place? Because we want also to see if we are producing, as we would like to, the change that the people are talking about. Sometimes it will be change that comes from us, sometimes it will be change that comes from something else, and it's good to know anyways where the change comes from. So I'll briefly introduce this step 4, the selection of the most significant stories, the general way it works, and the specific way that we will try to make it work for us and for the Voices for Change project. The general way it works is that this technique, as I introduced last Wednesday in the first training, is a technique that is particularly useful when we have a wide range of projects in a wide range of contexts, with a lot of diversity, whether it's socially, culturally, geographical diversity. So the technique takes that into account and expects stories to come from very, very different places. So the basic level is the stories and the storyteller. So we have a large number. Here you have 5, and that's actually, we will stick to 5 per organization for the first part of the project, and I'll introduce that element again later. But you can have many stories, of course, from each, let's say, each village or each country or each organization, each youth center, depending on where you work. The second level is the first, let's say, place where there is a selection. So I'll go into the selection process and criteria in a couple of slides, but the idea is that there's different people who will be engaged in selecting the story. So narrowing down from maybe 5, maybe 10, maybe 50, depending on also the means of the organization, stories to those that illustrate better the changes that seem to emerge from the field interviews, from the story collection part. Here, the letters stand for what the people who created this technique had in mind. So they worked in a rather hierarchical type of organization. So they thought that each level of this organization should be involved. So the people who are in the direction, the people who are working in the field, and finally, and the M is for monitoring and evaluation people. And of course, since the ones who created this, are monitoring and evaluation people, they thought that then a last level of selection, so after the people in the direction, the people in the field, the people involved in monitoring and evaluation, narrow down the number of stories to those that they think are the most significant, then a final level would be monitoring evaluation people who would do the final selection. That's the basic description that they give. Of course, there can be as many levels as the levels of people that are involved in projects, and it's not necessarily a pyramid. It can be also much more horizontal, but the idea is that you can ask your donors to select some of the story. You can ask the people from the community to select some of the stories, but at some moment it needs to be narrowed down to a few stories that are particularly meaningful. In some cases, they even narrow it down to one story that perfectly illustrates the change brought by the program. In our case, it's both simpler and more complicated. We have 2 moments of collecting stories. Again, as I mentioned in the first training, how this technique works better if you can collect more stories over the course of the project. So to react in real time is a very good technique to react and adjust in real time to what's happening in the field. For Voices for Changes, there will be 2 main moments, and I'll present this one more time before we finish this training. So at the end, it should be clear, despite all the colors and and different diagrams. The first level, if we think in terms of selection of project, is where we collect the stories. So we collect a first bunch of stories now until the beginning of June. For that bunch of stories, there will be a short selection group that you are actually invited to be part of. A few of you, and I will ask you later if and who wants to join. But the idea is that the stories, so 5 per organization, that will be collected until June. Then we spend around 1 week reading them and selecting them, and we pass them to the Earth Activist training, where they will then get inspired by them. They will read them, get inspired by them, and somehow they will guarantee a next level of selection, because the stories they will select to be part of the song, whether by citing them, whether by telling us that this is the story that inspired this part of the song, this is the story that brought in this idea, etc. They will ensure the second level of selection. On the other side, we have the local actions that will start after we have the songs, or the song. So between July and September, we will collect stories of change that are the consequence, we hope, of the local actions that we will run. So we will go and see if the local actions, based on the songwriting workshop and the advocacy elements that we will receive from the project coordination, if they have an effect. And again, a small group of us, hopefully not being by myself, will guarantee a first level of selection. So we will clean up all the stories, trying to find the most significant ones and give them to the project management meeting of October. Both these streams end in the policy development and advocacy document, in the time capsule, and in the final symposium of environmental and social justice. So we will help doing the selection. Other people, on one side, the activists, and on the other side, the project managers, or those who follow the whole project from the beginning to the end, will add their level of selection. And then finally, we will have a few stories, not only one, but a few stories that will be of support for the policy document, for the symposium and the discussions at the symposium, and will be in the capsule that is being created for the project. So far, any question or clarification? It was kind of the summary of last time. It's good. Yes, okay, I don't see questions. So today we will see the very important part of the process, which is how to select the stories. I'm taking this really letter by letter from the creators of this technique. At the end, I will give you a set of resources so that if you want, you can go more in depth into each phase and each step of the technique. But basically, at step 4, the selection of the most significant stories, what we are looking at is reading the stories. Ideally, we read the stories in group. So we have a, let's say, kind of a selection group, a selection committee, mostly for 2 reasons. The first one being that a lot of these stories will come from discussions that you have with people, and so they're born oral as oral stories, and it's good to hear the sound of the story to try to imagine also what's behind and how the story was shared at the beginning. But also we want to do it as a group because it gives us the possibility to go through the main steps together and to discuss and enrich our perspective about the stories thanks to the feedback that we receive from the others reading the same story. And we will test this today if it works or not in real time during the session today. Of course, if the stories are all around a certain domain, so around a certain topic, which we will, I will do with some of you maybe, but it will be my task to put together stories that you told me are specifically about a certain topic. Then we read together the stories that are around the same topic so that we can select them as representative of that topic. So, and what is important is that we document, so like you did, those of you who already prepared stories for today, you did for the report form, you filled in the form that helps us understanding why that story is important. Same when we go through the decision of which stories to select, we want to document why we did that selection. And again, we will try to illustrate the process today. There's basically 4 steps in the selection. The first is that everyone who is involved in the selection, so some of us, if we do a small committee among us to select the stories, the artists, when the stories go to the artists, the management committee of the project, when the stories go to the management committee, everyone needs to read the stories. Then there needs to be a conversation about the stories and which ones everyone thinks is particularly significant or representative. Then as a group, there is a decision to say, okay, let's go with this story or these 2 stories because after what we discussed, these seem to be the best. And then, of course, the reason for the group's choice is documented. So someone takes the time to kindly put down the reason to say, this is the story and this is why this story. To what are the things behind that story that made us choose this story as particularly important among the tens or dozens or hundreds of stories that we will have. So this is the process in a nutshell. And what we will do now is look at whether this process works or not for us by starting with the first step, which is reading the stories, and for many of us, listening to the stories. So many of you did the homework. I could use only a few of them because of the time constraint to prepare things, and also because of the format. I would invite maybe Gabriel, I think is not there yet, right? Let's see her in the list. So maybe I will invite Luca first to share the story that so you can see here in the slide that we had three main stories. One from the Amazon region, one from the neighbors region in Italy, and one from Turkey, from Anatolia. So I'll ask Luca to read it, and maybe I will put it on the screen as well so that you can follow more easily. Yeah, let me. Oops, sorry. Let me see. What am I sharing? This one. Yeah, I'm completely ignorant of technical. Am I sharing anything? Not at all, right?
It's just a black screen.
A black screen. That's not what Cantiere Giovanni sent me. They sent me a very good story. Okay, maybe it was too big. I try one more time. This is the story. This I share.
It's showing now.
Yeah,
it's showing.
Fantastic. Yeah. Okay, I'm so happy. Let's put it full screen, and then we listen. So for the next probably 15 to 20 minutes, including the next stories, we try to really listen to what's there and to follow on the screen while
okay, thank you, Francesco. I read the story, right? Okay. This condo is a hive, dozen of little cells glued together. This whole neighborhood is just more hives stuck side by side. And we are thousands of these that don't work together, don't know each other, don't even bother to say hello when we cross paths. This morning, I want to take Amy to the place where I used to play as a kid. But while I was growing up, the town was growing old. Maybe the trees were already old too, because now they're gone, dead or are full. Where the fields used to be, there's just a stretch of concrete, two crooked playground rides, and people with empty stares, more lost than ever. Morning, another fight with my father. He didn't sugarcoat it. I had to get a job and take care of myself. My family couldn't carry me anymore. Afternoon, 3 shirts, 2 tracksuits, underwear, and a duffel bag on the bed. No speeches, no drama, just a message to Francesco. I've got to contact Ischia night, February 27, but it could have been January, December, whenever. In this city, the air's never been breathable. And home, don't get me started. When my dad's around, it's just yelling. My girls are really dear to me. And here at home, it's obvious, I'm the extra one. February 27, night, Frattamaggiore station. The tracks blur beyond the pouring rain, but our train's there. Naples, Corso Umberto, drenched, then Molo Beverello. That's where the boats to the island leave from. We booked tickets from our phones, and by 3 p.m. we got an island under our feet. February, I think 28, not 29. The island was a beginning. I started working right away. Restaurant jig with a dozen locations. One night they'd give me cash and a ticket for the next day. Go cover a shift over there. On the island, sometimes on the mainland, Rome mostly. First once, then again. Then they told us to stay. March 16. Now we're based in Rome. The city is huge. To us, it feels like Vegas, but with more Chinese shop. And hey, every now and then you even spot a tree. The restaurant gave us housing too. Me, Francesco, and 11 other waiters and dishwasher. Socks, sweat, and a mess of languages. At night we were so dead tired that the only thing we shared was stolen, begged, pestered out like gold. But meant the atmosphere. The time taught me a lot. I had to do everything on my own. The apartment was crap, pay came only at the end of the month, and in the morning, Francesco and I would count our coins. Never enough, not even for one. I'm not ashamed to say it. One night we were flat broke. A guy as a pizza took him up and asked if it happened his night. I didn't, but I'd seen those little bags left on the tables. I ran upstairs, grabbed an empty one, crashed up to 2 painkillers, filled it. With the cash, we ate. Maybe lost a bit at slots too. But the guy came back the next day and the day one after, always asking for me. Fruit, I was in deep, but I go out. I don't regret it. We were broke. We needed to eat during the same track suites for days. That low point taught me something. I could do anything. Thought, action, thought, action. That's when Francesco and I headed to Treviso, chasing 2 girls with Metronista. Haircuts, train tickets, even flowers, 250 euros. They never showed. We were pissed, crushed. But every time we talk about it now, we laugh, thinking of that Padua Conegliano train. Us dying on tickets, flowers still in hands 2 days later, trailing petal down the aisle like idiots in a movie. Everything that happened there and everything that happened before, those are the words I write into my verses now. It was wild, brutal phase, quick and unforgiving, but it changed how I live, how I see the world, how I spend and how I earn. It gave me real friendship that still hold today, and it taught me the only way to grow is to live your eyes, look people in the eye and say good morning. Me and Francesco came out better for it. I think it all happened because Frattamaggiore, with its thousands of people, always felt too small for me. And maybe that's why I write, to escape, and maybe, just maybe, it will be my ticket to leave this place for good. Yes, this is a photo on the ship where they're living from Naples to on Instagram.
Thank you very much, Luca. It's so as we said, that the stories this time might be of challenge, might be of change, and probably the stories of both. I think for me, as a person who knows the places that they're talking about, and knows that the topic of the Voices for Change is more related to climate justice, but for me, it really strikes me as extremely related to climate justice, because the moment they said we had an island under the feet, I can feel a contact with something different and concrete, which is their daily life. In Frattamaggiore is mostly concrete, and then the photo is the water. So another elements that it's freedom for them. Water gave them freedom. And the only other way we see the nature is the flowers, the petals of the flowers that are dead after 2 days. So it's, in a way, for me, it's really, when I read it, maybe it was night, so I was more sensitive as well to the story because of that. But I really could see how much climate justice needs were in the story by the absence of anything related to nature and the relation with the nature, despite the fact that they were looking for that. I mean, the human relations, of course, and they managed to come out of that, but the nature's really striking by its absence in my opinion. But you will discuss that more very soon. Then maybe Femi, if you can share yours, which is very different, but
So, shall I start?
Please.
It's about the story of a lake, and the person who gave her experience is talking now. I look at Lake Burdur now, and my heart aches for what it once was. It stood as one of the largest and deepest lakes in Turkey, a sanctuary not only for its shimmering waters, but for the countless bird species that depended on it. But today it's a shadow of its former self, a landscape marred by pollution, exploitation, and negligence. The water, once pristine and teeming with life, is now tainted with paste. Plastic litters the shoreline, agricultural runoff poisons its depth, and excessive water extraction has drained its vitality. The balance that once sustained an entire ecosystem has been shattered. The destruction didn't happen overnight, nor was it caused by a single mistake. It was a slow, relentless assault on the lake's integrity. Garbage was discarded carelessly, solid waste accumulated, and toxic chemicals seeped in from nearby agricultural fields. Pesticides and pollutants suffocated the life within, disrupting the fragile web of species that depended on its waters for survival. The birds that once soared above its surface are disappearing, their numbers dwindling as their habitat collapses. The lake, once a lifeline, has been left to decay, forgotten by those who had the power to protect it. Now, standing at its edge, I see not a thriving wetland, but a dying swamp. The vibrant ecosystem has faded into silence, replaced by murky waters and remnants of what once flourished here. It is painful to witness, knowing that this wasn't inevitable. It was the consequence of human disregard. We failed the lake, and in doing so, we failed the birds, the wildlife, and the delicate balance that makes nature whole. And I wonder, will we ever learn, or will we continue to turn a blind eye until there is nothing left to say? Would you like me to read also the rest, or is that okay?
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, what I was thinking is maybe since Juliana also joined, I think, right? Juliana, you're there?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, I had problems with connection.
No problem, no problem. It's perfect timing, actually. So I was thinking maybe I also share, Juliana, I shared the photos that you sent so that we can have a third example. What we are doing now is sharing 3 stories. So Luca and Cantiere Giovani shared one, Femi from GSM shared another one, and I can put on the screen the photos that you sent. If you could briefly tell us what the photos are, without going into the details of the projects that you have there, but really what the photo illustrates. And then the 3 of you, so Luca, Femi, and Juliana, can give us a bit the background of where the story come from. Okay? And then we'll do the actual selection. So I'll put up, let's see how much time it takes this time. Oh, seems like I'm actually in there. So Juliana, I will put the photos, and I would like to ask you if it's okay for you to just tell us really for each photo what it is. Nothing more for the moment, okay?
Sure.
So we know that they come all from the Amazon region and from the Shuar indigenous community. Tell us, like, for each story, what it is, meaning.
Yeah, so in this first photo is about the natural environment of the place. It's full of water and full of nature, and it's the jungle itself, and it's the place where the community is located.
Fantastic.
This is a picture of the deforestation they had to do to implement a place for farming, because they don't know about any other techniques of farming, so they just cut trees and keep cutting and then planting there, and then cut another place and plant there, because they don't know how to manage soil. So every time the soil gets bad, they get another place and they deforest that area. And in this part is a good approach and a practice that we did. It's called Huerto Familiar, which is familiar orchard. And it's very similar to the next picture because this is one of the places where we started teaching them how to do organic agriculture. And I wanted to include this picture as well because it's a community work. It's for all the community, and all the community came together to prepare the soil of each of the orchards that they used for the project. And this one is the results of the first planting. All these vegetables are huge in comparison of the ones you get in the market, and it's because they did a very good job preparing the soil before farming. And here I am. This is a meeting that we had with the community during that project, and we are teaching them not only techniques of farming, but also other abilities like such as leadership and finances, for example. So here I'm doing kind of a non-formal education activity to put them in the, like, to make them participate in this kind of sessions, because for them it's very boring. And so I include games and for them to also like feel confident to talk, because they are very shy. And this other picture is very similar to the last one, but to the other one, but here they were able to join a fair where many other producers share products, so they are already being part of the province market. And here we invited a university to teach them how to use these new products that we included in their diet, because they just wanted to focus on one vegetable and the rest is just for chicha. And it's not the diet we want to promote because they are lacking of vitamins and minerals. And we offered them a lot of different vegetables that were very good at producing at their lands. And we managed to bring people from the gastronomy, is that the word in English? Gastronomy school at the university, to teach them how to cook them and how to give them recipes so they can enjoy these vegetables. And this is the second part of the project, which is using the land that were already deforested to take corn, for example, in this case. And it's because we wanted not only to be one source of food, but also one source of daily income. So they are supposed to harvest this corn and sell it in different forms. But during the project, we had a lot of challenges like floods, and you can see here how big the river grew. And it was a disaster because it took a lot of plantations that we already had. And the next picture is it shows all the corn that went with the river. And of course, we are working on solutions and to find other places for farming instead of the ones that we lost during that flood. And here I put, these two girls are awesome. They are very funny, and they were helping to clean the pad and to prepare the soil. But I put this picture because in every single meeting I do, the focus of the community is give something to these kids and leave the land better that they found for these kids. So that's why I put that picture.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So I guess you thought it was a story of change, but it's also a story of challenge, because sometimes change comes first and then the challenge brings back everything to before the change happened. But thanks a lot for for sharing, Juliana. So maybe we go back to Femi and then back to Luca to tell us a little bit more also about who is the person of Femi's story and why she talked about these things. I think we could feel the pain of the person.
I'm going to share it now. So it was in the form of an interview. The story was shared by Asuman, who is an environmental engineer and who was a former GSM camp participant. And she's working on environmental issues in Turkey. And as you understood from the text, the changes took place in a lake called Burdur, which is located in the lakes region. And I'm not going to read everything, but this is not the only lake which is suffering from the same causes. And related to what GSM is doing on the issue, we are organizing online workshops on climate change, etc., etc. The person explained that this is only an example, as I said, but many lakes in Turkey had several similar problems. And she thinks that there is little awareness about the ecosystem in the public, and this makes the situation more complicated. And she thought there needs to be a better communication with the public in terms of the importance of protecting environments. And she said that it needs to be looked at holistically, not just one unique case.
Thank you, Femi. Like I was saying that when reading the story and then also the report form that gave me the context, I really could feel the pain of the person. And the picture I put of the lake is maybe one of the most beautiful I could find, exactly to stimulate a bit this contrast of understanding between, yes, the lake looks beautiful, but the lake is dying. And with that lake, many other lakes in Turkey. And like it reminded me of a poem of an Italian poet, which said, it's not about getting, desperate about that. It's about knowing it so that we can do something. Like if you don't know, as Femi's interviewee said, if people are not aware that that's happening and just see a beautiful lake, then nothing will happen. There will be no change. So I think these kind of stories are very useful also because they point us towards the direction that we need to change ourselves. What kind of activities can be useful. So I found it. I mean, I could feel the pain, but also the call for action. So it was a challenge, but already pushing us towards a positive change.
May I just
yes, please.
May I just add one thing? We are doing campaigns, but at the same time, there are counter campaigns of communication. It's great that you said that I could put a nice picture of the lake. This is what the opposite side is always doing. For example, they are taking the lake's pictures in the time of spring, so there is more water due to the rain, and you think that everything is going on perfectly. But in the summertime, there is not any water left because you're using the water for the agriculture, because it's very hot in Turkey, etc., etc. So it's important how you are presenting the issue to the outer world. Thank you.
That's exactly why, like without the story, the picture looks beautiful, but with the story, the picture looks even more painful because we know what's going on. So that's why we really want to use the power of the stories. And Luca, I don't know if you can share just a little bit more about Gaetano and Francesco, which is not me, is another friend
Yes.
that went with Gaetano.
Yes, of course. We collected the story from the youth center where we work, me and Sirio, and we organized the work in 3 meetings. And we asked them for a story of challenge, of a significant challenge, and they came with a rap song. So in the second step, we we try to tell to find the story in this song. So okay. Gaetano is 20 years old, and he came at the youth center with his friend Francesco. That is 19. This is a personal story. It's about social justice, maybe not really based on climate justice, but we know in this place of Italy, the topics are very related because maybe people don't know, but we have to migrate because the situation about the way of live is not very good. So they came with this story about their challenge to find a better life, no? And they immigrate to an island to try to work, and then they were transferred to Rome, and then in Treviso, in all the Italy, to find a job, to try to do something with their own. And this is, I think, very significant because they're not adult, no, they're youth. When the story happened, they were maybe 17 and 18, and it's hard to think that you take a ship, leave everything to find a job and create your own life. So we find this story very significant because it describes a very difficult challenge, I think, and very powered by this help.
Thank you very much, Luca. Let me go back to where we were. Then let's see how much. Yes, I'm sharing, right? Yay! Fantastic. So as I said, this was the first, but the most important, I would say, step in the selection process of the stories is to really read the stories. And I hope you enjoyed listening to Luca, to Femi, and to Juliana, and through them to the people they work with, because that's who the people are. They're the people they work with for their projects and for their organization. What we will do next is a little bit painful, but remember, it's just an exercise, and it's a kind of vaccination for what we will need to do at a bigger scale, and maybe even more painful when we start having a lot of stories. We'll go through the 3 other steps of the process of selection, which means having a group conversation. So we will split into smaller groups. I think, and this is for my nice colleagues who will do the technical splitting, because I'm completely idiot when it comes to technology. They say, I would say maybe 3 groups. Okay, that's the technical communication for my colleague who will push the buttons. So we will divide in 3 groups. The idea is to have a conversation. Let's limit it to 10 minutes, unless you get overly excited and want to continue a little bit more. But let's say we have 10 minutes split into 3 groups. The idea is to have a conversation about the stories that you just heard and looked at. Decide which story is felt to be the most significant, which with an additional aspects that I will tell you. And then, of course, when you decide, try to write down, and then one person per each group should share with the others when we come back in plenary the reason for the group choice. Okay, so we always need to document why a certain decision was taken, so that others can also understand why that story that you are sharing with us as the most significant story is meaningful for you. So as you see, basically this technique repeats again and again at different levels, the same process of sharing stories, understanding why these stories are important, and then narrowing down so that we get the stories that talk the best about the topics that we want to talk about. So what I was saying is that we split in 3 groups, but I would like, let's say, group 3 to look at the stories from a different angle than group 1 and 2. So I will ask group 1 and 2 to look at the stories under the angle of IVS for climate justice and ecological restoration. So when you think which story should be chosen as the most significant and the most meaningful among the stories that our colleagues kindly shared, you are thinking in the optic, in the direction of IVS for climate justice, ecological restoration. While group 3, and I hope you will know that you are group 3, it should be written in the Zoom split. You will look at the same stories, but more in terms of right-based and inclusive participation in IVS. So we expect, of course, to see with that different stories can tell us different things, and that we choose them based on also our objectives. And as you know, there is more than these 2. We have 5 in total, but climate justice being the bigger one. Let's have 2 groups discussing which story illustrates the best these aspects, and then another group thinking from the point of view of participation, of fighting exclusion, which story is the most significant. Is it more or less clear what we ask now? The idea is to talk about, for 10 minutes and then come back. One person per group tells us the choice and the reason for the choice. Are we good with that? Do you remember the stories enough? Yes. Okay, then maybe, yeah, Raksha, you go. Can you help us split them? Perfect. Thank you.
Yes.
Did it.
We are back.
Lost a member.
We are the first people, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Linus, how is everything going on in Kenya? Are you ready for us?
Are you ready for me? That is the question.
Yeah. Wonderful.
All is well. Yeah, I don't know. I've not seen a participant from you yet.
Because I couldn't. How am I supposed to apply for it? There was a email before, but I lost it. I should do the application, shouldn't I?
You should, I think, because I have from South Africa, I have from India, I have yeah, I have from different parts. Not so many, but maybe it's 4 participants now. So you're not too late. I think
Can you remind us the link? How am I going to apply for it?
I think it's with CCIVS. If you look at your emails, they shared. Yeah, where you're supposed to fill the details of the participant and all that. And okay.
Yeah. Hey, this internet for me.
Yeah, why can't you guide Femi on how to register as participant for the Voices for Change project?
Which one, Bernardus?
He wants to know the link that was sent where you are supposed to register. It was sent by CCIVS on how the participants feels, or you fill the details of the participant.
Oh, to come to Kenya.
Yes.
Okay, I'll share with Femi. Femi, just send me a message on my email, and then I'll share you the email.
I don't know your email.
Okay, let me send you my email directly to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you sending it to my? Do you know my email address?
I'm sending to you directly right now.
Okay. From the chat.
Yeah.
epedzi@yahoo.com, huh?
Yes. I'll send it to you after this meeting.
Okay.
Well.
I know another guy from GSN is Ercel, Arbas.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We met in Italy. We met in Italy with the alliance when he comes from Turkey to.
That's correct.
Now I had to find a little time to contact him to know deeper what is happening in Turkey and so on. Francesco, our group is the fastest of all.
Yeah, no, just we finished as well, but came back. No, I came back because Sirio was. Thank you.
Welcome to our platform. This is where we are discussing issues of climate justice.
Good. We too. We did the same.
Group 2 managed to
probably
finish.
not the same decision and not the same reasons for the decision. Let's see.
Yeah.
Normally the others will come back too.
I actually sent my story to your personal account. I'm so sorry.
No, I think it was to the right account.
Oh, okay.
No, it wasn't to the right account. It was to the right account, but it was already during the meeting, so I
blame Enoch. Enoch was the one who confused me. He's there.
I'm sorry also, Francesco, I sent mine late also. This schedule like.
No problem. We actually had some troubles also sending out emails because I wasn't in the mailing list of the project, so I couldn't send to everyone. I could only send to the ones who had signed up on the Excel table long ago. So only a few of you. So you are forgiven, given the circumstances. Okay, we will be much stricter in the next steps. No, but thank you because it's really interesting and useful to have the stories and it's really the type of technique that if you don't send things, we have nothing. But if you do send stories, we have fantastic things. So I think we are 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we are all back from the groups, right? There was 3 groups, and I see people who are in the 3 different groups. Okay, fantastic. I might then share again where we are. We are here. Okay. So if one person per each group could briefly share which story you choose and why. And you can start from the group number 2, maybe, meaning not mine. Do you think who would share?
Shall I share?
Yes, Femi.
Okay? So, because I was one of the presenters, I didn't want to vote, and I asked the other ones what they think, and they took the story of Lake. The main reason, there were 2 reasons that they shared. They said that it's really directly related to climate justice and also ecological restoration. But at the same time, they said that they can connect with the story because similar things are happening in their countries. And they also gave an example, for example, Lake Victoria, which is shared between 3 countries. They are having similar problems, even more complex, because it's not in one country, but in 3 countries. This is the main reason they pick the story of the lake. Is that correct? Is there anything that you want to add?
No, you are very correct.
Thank you.
Fantastic. I think that's very clean and well done. I mean, especially we have 10 minutes to discuss this. Meaning the pertinence of the story is really directly easy to understand that it talks about climate justice. And I think the most important is that people can connect, can relate to it. So So that's something very, very important, which is, I mean, the story itself says it's not just the lake, this lake, but all the lakes in Turkey. And then talking with other people, you discover, no, it's all the lakes in the world maybe that are facing the same. So it has this power of people being able to recognize themselves in the issue, even if it's far away, but it's my issue as well. So I think you identified very well. So this is the kind of reasons that we want. It's exactly the kind of reason that we want. Like, it's a story that makes people relate and connect. So in that sense, it's a very powerful story. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. And then maybe we go back to group 3, which was not about climate justice.
I think it's us, right?
I think so.
Okay. So we discussed, and unfortunately, we didn't have so much information, or we didn't remember so much about the story of Italy. So we are focusing more on human rights-based projects and stories, and I think we choose the Schwarz story because it's about human rights after all. Of course, it's a lot related to climate change and resilience and adaptation to climate, but the story is about this project that was searching for food and for employment for the community. So it's human rights based, more about like how the story was told. And it is important, and we discussed that at some point all the climate stories are human based because we are protecting the environment, because we are the species that will suffer the most if we keep damaging it. So it's all about humans, because if we just leave the world just like that, it will recover, it will change, it will evolution, but we are the ones that are worried about this, mostly because of us.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the group wants to add anything? Then we come back to group number 1.
Okay. We choose the first story, Juliana's story, because it's really about climate change and social and climate justice, because that's a challenge of the community where Juliana worked. And we think that the last photo, the photo with kids that were cleaning the camp, it's very powerful, because that's about the impact that the work by the organization had a sense, and I think we can see how it works. Working to make the right choice, no, and help others to clean the camp, and maybe we can see that the impact was very high, and I don't know if do you want to add something, but I think that this is why we choose this story, because that's about a challenge in a context of climate exchange and problem that came out from this kind of story, and so.
And just to clarify that, because the stories shared by Juliana were actually more than one, meaning each photo we should and we did consider each photo as a story. Then I asked them to choose among the pictures which one they found the most significant photo. So that's why they were mentioning specifically about the last photo with the young kids doing themselves some volunteering, and I think also what Juliana shared about the fact that the community points at the kids as the reason why they do these things was also quite important for the choice as well. And this is the only group that didn't choose the story of the person who was in the group who shared the story.
Yes.
Of course, I mean, we know Femi didn't vote, so it doesn't count. Juliana, I don't know how it was the process in your case, but anyways, that was just a little. We need to remember that that's a potentially tricky part when we do the selection. I will quickly go through a few ways that we can do the story collection and selection, but obviously there are pros and cons in being extremely participative, meaning that at some moments we might want, and it's a nice experience to do the selection together with the people who share the stories. So for instance, gather together a series of people who share stories and ask them to do the selection, because in a way it would be really coming from the people, but then it can also create a little bit of a weird process. So the fact of passing the stories to someone else who is less involved is not necessarily bad, meaning as long as the voices are preserved, it might be even a better thing, because there are some potentially difficult situations in doing I mean, I'm not saying that Femi and Juliana coerce anyone into voting their stories, but in larger group there can be dynamics that might bring also people to share stories more amazing just to be the one story that is chosen, and so to not necessarily link the selection and the people who share the stories is also a valid and acceptable way of doing. Is there anything that you want to share about the discussion or the mini selection we did?
Yeah, we talked about the other stories from the participants in the group, but they were more climate oriented, so that's why we didn't choose those. But they were very interesting because we found, as Femi said, aspects that maybe are situations that people believe it's just for their region, but it also happens all around the world. And sometimes there are topics that no one's paying enough attention to those issues. So I think it's every story has a very meaningful content if you share with someone else, because it could be others person reality as well.
I think this is a very important point again, because what we will be looking for this project is a sort of minimum common denominator, stories that tell about our story as a movement. So we might choose one from Ecuador and one from Napoli and one from Turkey at the end as the three more representative stories, but they will be stories that anyone else, and said, like people that work at Lake Victoria, even if the story is about a lake in Turkey, they will recognize themselves and say, that's my story too. So we do look for this potential universality, let's say, of the stories that we are going to select. But we want them to be real stories of real people, and that's why it's very important that we go really in the field and we talk with the people in the field. But in the selection, definitely this potential for representing other stories and other organizations and other countries than the one where the story takes place is a very important aspect of that we will be looking for. Very quickly, because I think it's quite intense and long already, but I will go to three alternatives to what most of you have done, which means talking 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 or 2-to-1, depending on the settings with the person. So like the classic interview where we want one story from one person or more than one story from one person. People have tried some different approaches, and if you see that some of these correspond better to what you want and what you can do, because it's also the project puts at your some financial and some technical support for you to collect the stories, of course, but you might not be 100% comfortable with the normal setting of going, collect storing, then coming back, sending the stories, then going again, collect more stories, etc. So there's at least these three, not necessarily faster, but slightly easier alternatives. And I will put in the resources a paper that talks about this. But basically, other ways that we can do this is analyze existing stories. So if your organization has already collected stories in the form of interviews, in the form of videos, the large sense of stories in the form of pictures that you know what's in the picture and you can describe what's in the picture, we can also work on that, meaning we can consider those stories as existing data. And as long as you are able to, let's say, fill the report form that goes with the story, so take an old photo taken 2 years ago, but that really talks about, for instance, the topic of climate justice and how your organization is working on that, or the challenges that you have, the change that you brought. We can also work with that. So analyze those stories, because that can also help us seeing the values and the preferences that you have when working on this topic. So analyzing existing stories can be an alternative to going and collect. If you have a lot, let us know and we can work on that. A second alternative or additional way of doing is internal focus group, meaning if your organization, you start being 3, 4, 5 staff plus a couple of leaders who work all together on a certain project, you can have the stories from the staff and the active members that work on these projects. It's totally interesting, totally valid. We are not looking for samples that are statistically representatives. We are looking for stories. So your colleagues, yourself, some of the camp leaders, for instance, might have very interesting stories, and you can have just a focus group with 5, 6, 7 of them and collect already the stories that you need for this phase, for instance, for the first phase of the project. That's another alternative, an internal focus group. I'm sure that there's a lot there to be shared from your colleagues at work. And then the third way that I will go a little bit more in detail is organizing really a 1 hour, 1 hour and a half storytelling workshop inside something else that you are already doing. Okay? So for instance, let's say you have your general assembly, you have a camp leaders training, you have a meeting of all your camp hosts. For instance, if you do many WordCamps and you meet regularly, you have the volunteers post-camp event, although it's not really the season, or the volunteers training as well. Many of them might have done volunteering before or might just share stories of their challenges. So there is already an event, and you can just slip in with some organization a simple storytelling workshop. So you will see, anyways, we share the slides. I don't want to go too much into the details, but the idea is that in around 1 hour, with a group of maybe, 15, 20 people, you can just divide them into small groups and do exactly the things that we did, except that in each group, the people write down their story. And then what we do, so with the same criteria, like what was the change, the most significant challenge or the most significant change, making sure that they share what happened and why it's important to them. And then we pass the stories to another group. So let's say group A, 5 people, 5 stories. Those stories go to another group B or C, and they do the selection and vice versa. So that everyone discusses and agrees on the most significant ones. And in 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, you have 20, 30 stories and already a selection done by the people themselves that you're working with of 3, 4, 5 very representative stories. Of course, then you can still choose to send more or select even more, but it becomes very participative and potentially funny if they fight for being the best story. But with the small possibility of some weird interaction, it's actually quite a functional and quite an interesting way of collecting a lot of stories in a relatively short time. So these are three alternatives that I wanted to share, and that you will have in the slides when we share them. Very briefly, the last step is the verification step. As we know, the stories might be completely invented. I mean, maybe Femi never talked with someone who was an environmental engineer and is just a very good story writer, you know, and maybe the pictures of Juliana are stolen from the project of someone else. All these, we want to have a verification process, not necessarily something very strong, but we want to avoid exaggeration. We want to avoid fictions, definitely, because we said we want the songs, we want the advocacy to be based on a true story. There's three moments when we want to have a look if it's realistically true or not. The first is when you get the story. So you can really double check when someone tells you a story. Is the moment to, if you're not convinced 100%, or if you simply want to situate the story better in a context so that you can say, that probably did happen. That's the first moment when you want to do some basic verification. The second moment is if we choose the story to be communicated beyond our internal discussions, beyond our internal program. So let's say we choose a certain story, one of the three stories of today, as an example to give to the donor, as an example to give to our local government. Then we want to go back and maybe talk again with the person, clarify. Verification is a bad word, but it's the word that is used. But the idea is to really fully understand how the story is and make sure that the story tells what we want it to tell, and that we are not just bending the story, or that it was not enriched by the person to make us happy, because that's very easy to happen. The people might want us to be very happy with the story. And the third moment is, of course, if we use a certain story to recommend important changes in our policies and procedures. So, for instance, the last two slides of Juliana with the flood, and I mean the flood, the river overflowing into the cultivated area and all. If those two stories will be used by Chiriboga, by Project Chiriboga, to change, as Juliana said, like the place where maybe we do the cultivation in the future years, then we really want to make sure that that photo is taken in that place, that the photo represents not just once in 100 years time, but a concrete risk that can be repeated soon, and it probably will happen again before we change our policies based on that. So these are three important moments where we want to have a look at the story a little bit more in detail. Yes, Luciano.
Yes, only one question on the collecting moments about the story. In Legambiente, maybe we can use all the three ways that we have to collect the stories. Especially the first one we can use in May during a national event of our youth committee. But my question is, we already set and schedule the program of the meeting. So we don't know if we can create a dedicated slot inside the program to do all the activity of collecting and then the group activity on the stories. It's possible to collect only the stories during the meeting, and after in a second moment also with different people that are collect and share the stories to do the evaluation and the second part of the evaluation, or not. Because if we can use the national meeting of young activists in our organization to collect the stories and then work on them in a second moment. To don't because for us it can be important to bring this kind of activity and put inside our everyday activity and our national activities. But we have a lack of time during the days, and I don't know if we can.
No, definitely. Meaning that is a choice that we are leaving completely to you. Meaning, if you look back at the standard level of selecting stories, what happens here at A, B, C, D, E level, it's up to you. Meaning, if you have a context that allows you to collect the stories in one place, then do the selection among the staff, or collect the stories among the staff, and then go in the place and share the stories and say, which one do you think? Both are completely okay for us, as long as we get some stories at the end and you tell us where these stories come from. So knowing actually this process is going to be very interesting, because it will also show the richness of different structural approaches to how stakeholders are involved, the different choices that are made in this level of selection. So it's completely okay that you collect the stories at the big event, because you have a lot of people, and then do the first selection yourself at some moment. And even if the first selection is too complicated, then you send the stories, and then we create this little reading committee and we do the selection. But it's completely it makes a lot of sense, and you can go ahead with that.
Thank you.
We don't talk about this, but maybe in the future we will. There are other steps that can be taken once we have the stories and when we have the selection. One is feeding back the results. So you might want to go back, for instance, in Legambiente next year at the same meeting. You can share back the stories. We have worked 1 year on these, and these are the stories that we selected. And it's a good way to keep the momentum. People are excited to share the stories, and it's even more exciting when they see that the stories are coming back, maybe with some other stories coming from Ecuador and Turkey. So feeding back the results is an important step that you can take afterwards, and we can take. We will do it, of course, in the project, because we will have the advocacy document that will go back to the local actions. Quantification, this is something that I can try to do if we have enough stories, to try to see a little bit more how many people were involved in the stories, how many people shared their stories, who these people are, and the secondary analysis, which means looking also at what kind of stories do we have. That is there a tendency to talk more about certain things than other things. So these 3 steps are not essential for the project, but are things that can be done. Very important. This is the third slide that talks about the same thing. I try to do 3 slides in 3 different ways of expressing it, so that one of them will be the way that maybe you prefer. This is what's next, the things that are left to do. So first line is the story collection for what we said, challenge and change. So at this moment, we can also collect just the challenges. We can collect already some positive or negative changes. But between yesterday, you sent stories already. Yes. So between yesterday and June 1st, we want each of the organizations that are supposed, as for your contract with CCIVS, to collect stories. We want at least 5 stories, whether they are the only 5 stories you collected or the 5 stories that are left after the internal process that you did to collecting many more stories. We want by June 1st to have at least 5 stories. Why? Because these 5 stories will go into the Earth Activist Training and Songwriting Workshop, and try to make sure that they are inspired and that they are supported in their process by our stories. The second process starts when the local actions, which are supposed to produce some change, will take place. So once the actions start, we can go back to the field and collect more stories, which we hope will be mostly stories of change. Maybe new challenges will arise, but of course, we hope that the tools, the songs, the documents that we will receive for the local actions, that will support the local actions, will produce change. So the second part of the year, we collect stories of change, and there we want to try to have a little bit more stories, up to 10. Maybe if you do already your own selection, we can accept less, but if you go raw and just send us everything you collect, make sure you collect at least 10 stories. And these stories go to the project management meeting, and at the end to the to feed the symposium, to feed the policy development document, and to feed the time capsule. In the middle, as you can see, there is this small group of researchers / volunteers, which is us. One of them is me. I have to do it. I mean, I choose long ago when we applied for the project to do it, but now I have to. It would be great if some of you who are interested in reading and try to find the reasons for stories to be selected, if some of you want to join me, the work that we would do is basically what you did in a much more organized way, but what we did in the small groups. We will read the stories, we will discuss why a story can be or cannot be particularly representative of the things that we want to raise for advocacy, that we want to raise for a better understanding of what we do. And then we pass them to the next level of use. So you can read and use all the resources. I will talk about that, but if you want to join me at the moment only, but some other people, to be part of this small selection group, which means reading the stories, at least for the first part, it will be around 25, 30 stories maximum. If everyone sends the 5 stories, it shouldn't be a lot. Please send me an email as soon as you make up your mind, because I think it's much better for the project if I'm not the only one reading, and it's very interesting. I mean, you could see today the 3 stories that were shared. I found them amazing, the 3 of them, and I'm sure that the others that were sent between yesterday and today that I couldn't use were also very, very interesting. So please don't hesitate to send an email and join. If you are too many, we will see, but I strongly doubt it. And the idea is that once we have this small group, then we can set up another online meeting purely to organize this part, and then to discuss and share our opinions about the stories. It's not too time consuming, but you will have to read 30, 40, 50 pages maybe in total. So it depends also how much of a reader, or watch pictures as well, because we saw stories can be pictures as well. I see. Yes, Luciano, no problem. Thank you very much for joining until now. We are making, I mean, the Sirio and Luca and the people in Cantiere Giovani, I think, are making a whole web page for the program. And inside that web page, there will be a specific part for the resources and a specific part about the impact assessment. So inside there, we will put things that for the moment I will share by email. Okay, I will share them now by email in the next days, and then they will always be there online. The slides from today and from last week, and the recordings, in principle, you are able to watch again if it's not too painful, these 2 trainings. We will upload there the stories, the ones that you shared now, and then as long as we continue, we will put them there in a dedicated space. The report forms, we have seen how important it is to have the information about the story, and how important it is for this technique to know more about the story, how it was collected, and all these things. We will have the report forms for the brave people among you who will join me in evaluating, so where we will write down why we chose a certain story. And then we will have the full guidebook to the most significant change technique. If you want to clarify some points or make them even more confused than they are now, there is 140 pages, I think, guidebook. It will be available because it's, thank God, it's free to be used for non-commercial purposes. And some shorter journal articles or some shorter guidebook that in 4 or 5 pages bring in some different ways of using this technique that might talk to you more than the general way of using. This is basically all. I hope that you feel motivated to go and get some stories for the project. If you feel motivated to join the reading and the selecting small committee, or if you know someone among your volunteers, because it doesn't need to be you, it needs to be someone who is interested in the topic. When I send out the materials, I will remind you what we are looking for, but if any of you knows already that you're interested, just send me an email. And thank you very much, because just this week is already amazing, the amount of meaningful stories and information that you managed to share. So I hope I'm very happy to work on this project, honestly. It's one of the most interesting that we have done recently. And it's the first one without numbers for me, without statistics. Femi.
May I have some questions?
Sure, yes.
The first question is related to something that we have talked in the previous meeting. And you were talking us about the advocacy proposals. There were 5. And I asked you, which one are we going to work about? And you said that let's concentrate on climate justice. So this is the answer. Am I right? We are going to work only on climate justice.
I think that the way that makes the most sense to me to proceed is that we collect the stories with climate justice as the key question. When we do the selection and the analysis, we take into account the other areas. So as you did in the group, like the stories like the one from Juliana from Ecuador, clearly is a story about climate justice, but it's also a story about participation, about inclusion. It's also a story about the colonization of the way of the relationship in terms of resources, in terms of knowledge, etc. So when we read them, we will keep in mind the 5, because it's very important that we are able to point out, to tag other things that are there. But for the questions that we go and try to collect, let's stay on climate justice, because I think it's the easiest thing to get people to talk.
This is the first question. The second question is this. For example, my organization in Turkey is not working directly and only on climate justice, but in different topics. But we have, let's say, sister organizations who are working directly on this topic, and youth organizations, etc. Is it possible that we collect stories from them too? Or does it have to be directly only to or related to our own organization?
To me, since you work with them and you know their work, it's very good to know their challenges and to know their stories. As long as you can tell us that, yeah, these are meaningful and they represent the challenges in Turkey, or the work that needs to be done, or the work that is being doing in partnerships, it's totally fine. What we want to avoid, of course, is that when we go into the stories of positive change, we take credit for something that is not us. I think I gave the example of when I did interviews in Ghana, they were telling us about this amazing hospital that was built, and after maybe 40 minutes of interview was built by someone else, absolutely nothing to do with us. But they were very happy about it, so they were sharing about that. So if it goes that far, maybe not. But if it's organization you work with, that you know about these challenges, thanks to them, you are sensitized and you want to sensitize others about these challenges because of their work, perfectly fine. Yeah.
Okay. So the other question is about the local action, because I joined this project quite lately, and I have difficulty to understand what the local action is going to be. You have talked about the first period, which is till the beginning of June, but afterwards, after Kenya, we are going to gather other stories. So together those 10 stories, is it the local action itself, or are we supposed to do other things related to the local action? I don't know if this is the question. This is a question that I should ask here, but it's a question that I have in mind, and I'm struggling to understand it.
Yeah, it's a question that I have in mind as well, because the project does a lot of things. I'm not 100% sure about how many of the partners of the project will actually implement the local actions officially as part of the project, meaning with some financial support, with some obligations, etc. What I do know is that whoever does some action during the summer, and I think most of our organizations do have actions taking place, can collect stories. Some of you have to, and I don't have the list, but for Legambiente, they have to. I think STS, they have to. I don't remember if GSM, you have to or you can. But the idea is that we collect stories after some action takes place. The local actions that are compulsory, we'll have to do the collection of the stories 100%. But so I don't remember honestly if GSM is one of those that have to do the local actions and therefore has to do the story collection or not. This
Who am I supposed to ask this question? Who am I supposed to ask this question?
To Vicky, I will ask as well. To Vicky, and I will read again the project, the full project description. But
okay.
But understand, Francesco, it's only CCIVS and Music International that are not going to do any local action. All of us are expected to do local action.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Then yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, because I remember the lot of names, so I thought maybe it's everyone, but I wasn't sure.
With whom can I discuss the local actions that they're going to do with other countries? Can we just have a kind of session to discuss what we are going to do? So is it possible?
Femi, I think with a local action, it depends on your work, because I think there's nothing stipulated exactly that you're supposed to do A, B, and C. What Francesco is giving example of, like you see the workshop, storytelling workshop, you could conduct a workshop in kind of compiling those stories together. You can be a work camp. After a work camp, you have to compile stories from your volunteers. It can be a session like a general session, a meetup. There's stories to be told. I think that's where we need to kind of like diversify. Let's not have one thing, like we have got work camps, all of us. No, it can be diversified to bring different perspective from around. Yeah. So I think
because it's flexible,
yeah,
I couldn't just. We can do many things, but
yes,
it's up to us.
Yes.
Yes, it's according to what you normally do
Yeah.
or what you have in plan as well, but that can be connected to this project in the sense of watching the challenges, but also proposing some change for a specific community, for example. Or you can make a work camp to raise awareness on some topic, because every single action is like about voices for change, but it's about also how you present your idea and how from these stories maybe actions that could tackle this or how to raise awareness about this topic in your stories.
Yeah. I think most organizations were asked when signing up. Most organizations did indicate one specific project that they were thinking of, but again, it was months ago, and I think in the meantime you might have changed the idea, and that's perfectly fine. But of course, we would like to see a clear cause and effect possibility there, meaning, you choose your online environmental awareness topics as your action, then the stories should come from that group, not from a completely different place. That's what we want for the stories. We want the second type of stories to be about the actions, so not unrelated. But what action it is your choice. But I think we will ask again who is doing what when the time comes.
But at the end of the day, what you need is going to have those stories. Am I right? Because
my side of the project, yes.
in different ways. So we are going to give you the stories at the end of our local actions. We are not going to explain in detail what the local action is. This is not the report that you want. As a product, you want to have the collected stories. Am I right?
Yes, and of course, in the report form, as you've seen now in the quick version that we did, there is a part that asks, "What are you doing there?" Like where the story is shared, let's say around the lake. What have you done at the lake, so that we can understand better and try to connect. Oh, you just did an awareness raising campaign around the lake, and then the story talks about how people started not throwing rubbish anymore in the lake. Okay, we get that the story is meaningful, not only in general, but specifically because you did something to sensitize people, and we see that people are changing their behavior thanks to the story. Then I have the full picture. That's why it should be related. But what is in the report form, it's enough. Just a short description of what you have done there, and then why it's meaningful, the story that you're using. Yeah. We don't want a report about the project, the action.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And also about the local action, like as far as I know from the last France meeting, I know that like about the local action, we are going to have a like elaborated discussion in Kenya, and we will think about what we can do and how we can contribute to to these ideas and our learnings. If you want, like I can probably talk with Vicky when she's back, that like to have another meeting about the local actions. Like if you want some clarifications around the project, probably I'll do that, and like I'll just send her a mail now, and like once I get a reply, I'll update all of you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be very useful, yes, for everyone, and then me and the other people who will be in the selection small group can join it as well, so that we can start imagining how to connect the best. Thank you, Jimai.
Yeah, no problem.
Very welcome, I think.
Yeah. And also like before we finish the meeting, and like if it's possible, like we can just take a group picture, just to yeah, like for social medias and also for like documentation.
Yeah, we are on.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Okay. 3, 2. Raksha, you can also help me with that. 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
Thank you, Jimai.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. We will send out some mails and some materials, and thank you for the stories that you shared and for the ones that you will share in the next months. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francesco, and everybody.
So much,
Thank you.
Francisco. Looking forward to see you people.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
See you
Bye-bye.
soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.